My
I
name
always
is
thought
Kyla
that turning
Ren. And
35
if
would
you
feel
think
more
you've ever felt like
significant,
an outsider in your own
that somehow
family,
the day
try
would
coming
arrive
home
with a
one
sense of
afternoon and
gravitas,
finding out your
of
bed's been
undeniable
replaced by a golden
adulthood.
retriever named Duchess. Not
Instead,
just your
I
bed,
woke up on
your
my
posters,
birthday
your
to an
bookshelf,
empty space
your
beside
desk
me
with
in
the
our
neat piles
king-sized
of
bed, and
scholarship papers
the
and
faint
battered
scent of my
notebooks.
husband's cologne
Gone.
lingering on
In
his
their
pillow.
place, a velvet
Daniel
dog
had
bed
left
the size of a
early,
car
which
door,
wasn't
squeaky
unusual.
toys strewn like
As a
trophies,
financial
and a
advisor
whole
for
corner
high-net-worth
converted into a
clients,
puppy
his
playpen.
schedule often
I wish I
demanded
could
early
say I didn't
mornings
see it
and late
coming.
nights.
But when you've
What
spent
was
19
unusual
years
was the
being the
absence of a
invisible middle
birthday card
child,
on my
the one who makes
nightstand,
honor
or a
roll but
text
not
message wishing me
headlines,
happy
it's
birthday.
hard to know when to
In
stand
the
your
8
ground
years we'd
before
been
the ground
married,
disappears.
Daniel had never
It happened on a
forgotten.
Tuesday.
He's
I
probably
just finished
planning
my last
something,
lecture at
I
the
told
community
myself,
college.
padding
a double
into our
shift at the
ensuite
coffee shop
bathroom to
after
start
that,
my morning
and my feet
routine.
were so numb I didn't
My
even kick
reflection
off my
stared
shoes
back
at
at
the
me.
door.
Dirty
I remember
blonde
the
hair
way
falling
the
just
light
past
from
my
my bedroom
shoulders,
window
green
spilled
eyes
down the
that Daniel
hall.
once said
I
reminded
remember the sound
him
of
of sea
Duchess
glass,
barking
a
high
few
and
more
sharp,
fine lines
like
around my
laughter
eyes
in
than
my
I
throat that
remembered
wouldn't
having
come
last
out.
year.
Mom was in the kitchen,
I was running my
humming like
fingers
she
through my
always
hair when
does
I
when she's
noticed
done
it.
something she knows
Daniel's
I won't
wedding
like.
ring sitting on
She
the edge
didn't
of the
even look up
sink.
from the mixing bowl.
He never took it off.
Oh, Calla,
Not
you're
for
home.
showers,
Don't mind
not for
Duchess.
sleep,
She's
not
just
for
getting used to her
anything.
new space.
A cold
New
sensation
space.
spread through my chest as I
My
picked it up.
space.
The platinum
I
band
laughed.
still warm as if it had
sounded
only
brittle,
recently been
like
removed.
glass cracking.
My phone
My
buzzed from the
space?
bedroom, and
I
I nearly
asked,
dropped the
though
ring.
I already
In my
knew.
rush to grab it,
Mom, where's
expecting
my
Daniel's
stuff?
name on the screen,
She just wiped her hands on her
instead,
apron
it
and
was
gave
my
me
best
that
friend,
tight-lipped smile.
Olivia.
The same one
Happy
she gave
birthday,
me when
Megan.
she forgot my birthday
Ready for
last
lunch?
year.
I'm
When she
dying
asked
to
me
give you your
tutor my
present.
sister for her exams,
I stared at
so
my
she could
husband's
take her
ring
new
as I
boyfriend
responded.
to the city for a concert.
Thanks, Liv.
You
Can
moved your
we
things
push it to
the
dinner?
basement, honey.
Something's come up.
Duchess needs a
Everything
calm,
okay?
open room.
Not
You
sure.
know how much
I'll fill
stress
you in
affects
later.
purebreds.
I tried Daniel's cell.
The basement.
It rang 4
That
times
word hit
before
harder
going to
than any
voicemail.
slap ever could. Cold
Hey,
concrete.
you've reached Daniel
boxes of
Warren.
old tax
Leave a
files,
message.
a leaking pipe in
Daniel,
the corner.
it's me.
And now my
I
bed, my posters,
found your ring.
my books,
Call me back,
piled between
please.
dusty Christmas decorations
By noon,
and
he
half-forgotten
still hadn't
family
responded,
heirlooms.
and the cold
I wanted
feeling
to
in my
scream,
chest had
but I didn't.
transformed
I just
into a
stood
hard
there, my
knot of
heart
dread.
pounding in my ears, my
This
eyes
wasn't like
stinging.
him.
And when
Even
I
during our
turned
worst
to find
arguments,
my sister,
Daniel
Marina,
had never gone
she was
completely
on the couch,
silent,
scrolling
never
her phone with
disappeared.
her legs draped
I
over
called his
Dad's
office.
lap. Duchess
Warren
sat
Financial.
at her feet
How
like
may
a
I direct
spoiled
your call?
queen. Marina didn't even glance
Hi,
at
Stephanie,
me.
it's Megan.
Dad didn't
Is
either.
Daniel in today?
I wondered if they even saw
A
me
pause.
anymore. Maybe they
Too
never
long
did.
to be normal.
When I went downstairs that
Mrs.
night, I
Warren.
lay on the lumpy mattress they
I
wedged
thought you
between
knew.
the laundry machine and the old treadmill.
Daniel took a personal
I stared
day
at the
today.
exposed pipes and listened to
The
the
knot
dog
in my
running
chest
laps above my
tightened.
head.
Oh, right.
Each bark
Must have
felt
slipped
like a
my
hammer
mind.
to my chest.
Thanks,
But
Stephanie.
you know what they didn't know?
I hung up and
While they were
immediately
busy
dialed
moving me
his
down
best
a level,
friend,
I'd been
Eric.
building myself up.
Megan?
I'd been saving
Happy
every
birthday.
cent from those endless
Thanks,
shifts.
Eric. Have
Every
you heard
tip,
from Daniel today?
every scholarship
Another
dollar.
pause.
Enough to get my own
What was
place,
it with
I
everyone
thought.
pausing
Maybe in a
before
year,
answering me today?
But the moment I
Not
saw
since
Duchess
yesterday.
drooling on the
Everything
pillows
okay?
I'd chosen when I was
I'm
12,
Not
I
sure.
knew I couldn't wait.
He wasn't home when I woke up,
wouldn't.
and he left
I
his
spent
wedding
that
ring
whole
behind.
night wide
He's not
awake,
answering his phone.
planning. I could hear
His
my mom
ring?
telling her book
Eric's
club how
voice
sweet
sharpened.
Duchess was.
That's not
How
good.
lucky Marina was
I
to
know.
have such a good emotional
Can you think of
support
where he
animal
might
for
go
her
if
anxiety.
something
Never
was
mind
wrong?
that my anxiety attacks
Maybe the
went
lake house?
unnoticed.
You know
Never
how he
mind
likes
that
to clear his
Marina's
head
version
there.
of an anxiety
The
attack
lake
was
house.
her boyfriend ghosting
Our
her
weekend
for a
retreat that
weekend.
we'd purchased
The next
3 years
morning,
ago.
I got up
A small
before dawn.
cabin
I
2
made
hours north
coffee.
of the
I sat
city.
at the rickety card
It made
table next to
sense.
the washing
If
machine.
Daniel needed
and I
space,
started
that's where he'd
drafting an
go.
ultimatum.
Thanks,
It was
Eric.
just a Google Doc
I'll
at
try
first.
there.
But the more I typed,
Let me know
the
when you
clearer it
find him,
became.
okay?
This wasn't just
And
about
Megan,
a dog. It was about
Whatever's
respect.
going on, I'm
About
sure there's an
space.
explanation.
About seeing me,
But the
not as a
gentleness in his
doormat
voice
or a
told me
backup
he was
plan,
already
but as someone
assuming
who
the
deserved
worst.
better.
I grabbed
By
my
the time
keys
the
and
sun
purse,
rose, I had
then
it all laid out.
hesitated.
30 days. That's
What
what
if
I'd give
Daniel
them.
came home while I was
30
gone?
days to move Duchess out.
I should leave
or
a note.
move themselves out.
As I reached for a
Because the
notepad on the
house,
kitchen counter,
the mortgage,
I noticed our shared
it was
iPad
mine
lying
now.
there.
They didn't
Maybe
know.
he'd used it
but I'd
recently,
used my
and
savings
there would
to
be
buy
some
out
clue.
the leftover loan from
I
the
shouldn't
bank
have
when
looked.
Dad missed too many payments.
Some part of me knows that
all those
now.
late nights at the cafe.
But in that moment,
the extra
driven by
credits,
an
the
increasingly
endless
desperate
forms.
need to
They thought I
understand what was
just wasting
happening,
my life
I
being a
tapped the
tryhard.
screen.
Turns out,
It lit
I
up
was buying my
immediately.
future. I printed
Open
the
to
notice
Daniel's
and stuck it
email.
on the fridge.
The message
right over the
displayed was
grocery
sent
list.
this morning at
I made sure to
6:18
sign my
a.m.
name
to
in
his
big
assistant,
letters, with the
Stephanie,
legal line about
taking
property
a
transfer.
personal day.
And then I went upstairs.
Please reschedule all
opened the door to
appointments.
my old
Will
room,
be unreachable.
and let Duchess sniff my
DW
hand.
below it was another
She looked
email.
up at me with those
This
big,
one from an address
dumb
I didn't
eyes,
recognize.
wagging her tail like I was a hero.
Chloe.Parker87@gmail.com.
Maybe in my own story,
The subject
I finally
line read,
was.
Re.
The house
Today's
woke
the
up
day.
slowly that
My
morning.
finger hovered over
Mom
it.
came
My
down
breath
first
caught.
in her robe, hair
in
in
my
rollers.
throat.
She saw the
Then I
paper and
tapped it.
squinted at it. When she
Daniel,
realized what
I
it
can't
meant,
believe we're
she
finally
called for
doing
Dad.
this. I've packed
Marina
everything as
dragged
we
herself in
discussed.
last.
Meet me at
Duchess
7:30 at our
prancing
spot
behind
and
her
then
like
we're
a
free.
prize they didn't deserve.
No more hiding, no
Nobody
more
said a
stolen
word
moments.
to me. Not at first.
I know this is hard,
but I could
especially
feel
on
the
her
heat of their
birthday.
stares like an
But a
open
clean
flame.
break is better.
The silence
She
cracked
deserves
when
someone
Dad
who loves
slammed
her
his hand on the
completely,
table.
and I deserve all of you.
Kala,
See you
what
soon.
the hell is this? I turned to face
See, the
him.
iPad slipped
The
from
man
my
who
hands,
called me his
clattering
little
onto the
shadow
counter.
when I was a kid. The man
Chloe.
who'd forgotten my college application
name
deadlines because Marina
was
needed
vaguely
a new
familiar.
phone.
Hadn't Daniel
It's a
mentioned a
30-day
new client
notice,
named
I
Chloe a
said,
few months ago?
My voice steady for the first
My
time
mind
in
reeled,
years.
trying
You
to
have a
piece
choice.
together when this might
Either
have
find a new
started,
place for
how I
Duchess,
could have missed
or
the
find new
signs,
housing for yourselves.
especially on her birthday.
I won't be sleeping next to the washing
The words
machine
burned
anymore.
into my vision.
Mom's
He'd
face
chosen
went
today
pale.
deliberately,
Marina's mouth opened
my
like a fish
birthday,
gasping for air.
to run off with another
You can't
woman.
do this, Marina hissed,
Don't
her
remember
voice
driving to
shrill.
the lake house.
You can't kick us out. This
The
is Dad's
2-hour
house.
journey passed in a blur
I
of
smiled.
numbness,
The kind
punctuated
of
by
smile that
moments of
comes when you
searing
realize
clarity.
The power has always
8
been
years of
yours.
marriage,
It
the
was just
fertility
buried
treatments
under
we'd been
everyone else's
discussing,
comfort.
the anniversary
Check the
trip to
deed,
Bali
I said.
we'd planned
It's my
for
house
next
now.
month.
Dad lunged
All
for the drawer
lies.
where he kept the paperwork.
When I pulled onto
I
the
watched
gravel
him fumble
driveway of
through
our
old
lake house,
envelopes, his
my
face
hands were
growing
steady.
red, sweat
Too
beading
steady.
on his
I
forehead.
felt disconnected
He found
from
the
my
folder,
body,
flipped
as
through
if
the
watching
pages,
myself from a
and there
distance
it
as I
was,
walked to the front
my
door and
name,
used my key.
in ink.
The cabin was empty,
Unmistakable.
but someone had been
Mom
there
sank
recently.
into a chair.
2 wine
Marina
glasses
started
sat on the
crying.
coffee table,
Huge crocodile
one with a
tears
smudge
that
of
had gotten
lipstick,
her out of
a
every
shade I
scrape
never
her whole
wore.
life.
I walked
But
through
not
each
this
room
one.
mechanically.
I walked out the front door
The
and stood
bedroom
on
told
the porch.
final story.
The morning
Rumpled
sun warming
sheets,
my face.
the scent of
I
unfamiliar
heard their muffled
perfume,
voices
a
arguing
woman's earring
behind
on the
me.
nightstand.
But for once,
Not
they
mine.
sounded small.
Never mine.
I felt
I
big.
sank onto the edge of the
Bigger
bed,
than that
finally
dog.
allowing tears
Bigger
to
than
fall.
the basement.
My phone
I
buzzed
had
again.
30 days to prove I
Olivia.
wasn't the family doormat.
Meg?
And they had 30
It's been
days
hours.
to decide what
What's going
mattered
on?
more.
I
Their
tried to
entitlement
speak, but only a
or their
sob
future.
escaped.
And if you
I'm
think
coming over,
bluffing,
she
you
said
don't know me at
immediately.
all. Before
Don't
we
move.
jump back in, tell us
I'm
where
not
you're
at
from.
home, I
If this
managed.
story moves you,
I'm at the
please
lake house.
subscribe. Tomorrow,
The lake house?
I have a special
Why?
story for you. The
Because
morning
that's
they read
where
the
Daniel
notice,
brought
I
her.
didn't stick around for the aftermath.
Her?
I packed
What are
my
you
work
talking
bag,
about?
slipped on my scuffed
His mistress.
sneakers, and
The
left
woman
the
he
house
left me
before
for.
Marina could start her
Today.
wailing monologue.
On my birthday.
The sun was barely up.
The silence on
and
the
the
other
air
end
still
lasted
smelled
only
like
a
wet
second
grass.
before
I sucked in a
Olivia's
lungful
voice
of
came
it,
back, tight
tasting
with
freedom
controlled
and
fury.
something like fear.
I'll be there in 2 hours.
My car,
Don't do
my
anything
battered
until I
old
arrive.
Civic, was
After
parked on
hanging
the
up,
street because
I sat
Dad's
motionless,
truck hogged the driveway,
staring at nothing.
As always.
Then my
I
gaze
threw
fell
my
on
bag in the
Daniel's
back
laptop
seat,
bag in the
settled behind
corner.
the wheel, and
He never
stared at
went
my
anywhere
reflection
without
in the
it,
rearview mirror.
which meant he'd be back.
My eyes looked older.
Or perhaps he'd left
Maybe
it
they
deliberately.
were.
Another
The
piece
drive
of his
to
life he
campus was a
was
blur.
shedding.
My mind replayed their
I
stunned
moved toward
faces
it,
over and
driven
over,
by the same
like a scene
self-destructive
in a movie
impulse
I'd
that had
waited
made
my
me
whole
check
life
the
to watch.
iPad.
And yet
More
a sliver
evidence?
of doubt
More
gnawed at
pain?
the edges.
What was I
What
hoping
if
to
they
find?
fought back harder?
Inside
What if
was
I
his
couldn't hold
laptop,
my
a
ground?
notebook, and
I
a small
parked near
velvet
the library,
box.
knowing
My
I wouldn't
hand
be able
trembled
to
as I
focus
lifted
in the
it.
basement's gloom
Too
tonight.
big for a ring.
Not anymore.
I opened
Inside,
it slowly to
the early
reveal a
risers
beautiful
were already
emerald
at their
necklace.
laptops.
My
Some with
birthstone.
energy drinks and
There
headphones.
Was a
some
small
drooling
card
over
inside.
textbooks,
To my Megan
fighting
on her
sleep.
35th birthday.
I found my favorite
The first
table
of
by the
many
window
we'll
and
celebrate
spread
in
out
our
my
new
folders.
adventure.
The new mortgage statement.
All
the
my
deed
love.
with my name on it.
Daniel, I
The
stared
letter I
at it,
drafted for a lawyer,
uncomprehending.
just in case they tried to play
A
dirty.
birthday gift?
I texted my
From the
best
husband
friend,
who had
Nora.
just abandoned
She'd
me
seen
for
my
another
family at their
woman.
worst.
And then I
She
saw the
always
notebook.
joked I was the changeling.
I flipped it open
Swapped
to
at
find
birth
a
into a nest that never
handwritten
really fit.
list,
I typed
finished
Slightly
paperwork,
tweaks,
birthday gift for
slightly
M,
selpty
final
dolls.
meeting while Chloe
Knoxes.
Ree, Parker account
Twirly
transfer,
tweaks.
pack overnight
Twirly
bag for
tweaks died.
surprise, confirm reservation
Sprightly
Olive
tweaks.
Vineyard, get
Twirly
ring
twirly
cleaned.
tweaks.
My head spun.
Twirlakes.
Nothing
Twirly
made
tweaks.
sense.
Then,
The emails,
30
the empty
days.
bed, the wine
the three
glasses,
dots
the
appeared,
lipstick,
then
they all
disappeared,
told one
then
story.
came back again.
But the necklace,
Holy
this list,
SH
They suggested
asterisk
something
T.
entirely different.
Are you okay?
The sound of tires on
Asterisk,
gravel
she wrote.
cut through my
Better
confusion.
than okay.
A car door
Asterisk, I
slammed.
replied.
Footsteps.
Terrified.
Approached.
But it's good.
I stood
It's right,
frozen.
Stories.
The velvet
She sent
box
me a
still in
string
my
of screaming
hand
emojis.
as the front door
then a
opened.
voice note. Kala,
Daniel
you're
stood
a
there,
legend.
his expression
Remember,
shifting from
they'll try
surprise
to
to
guilt you.
confusion to
They'll
alarm.
say you're ungrateful.
Megan?
You're not. You've been
What are you
more than
doing
enough
here?
for them.
How did you?
I exhaled. The
This
tightness
wasn't
in my
supposed to
chest
happen.
easing a little.
Yet,
I spent
Behind
the
him
next
appeared a
hour
woman,
reviewing my
slim,
financial
dark-haired,
spreadsheet.
professionally
Every
dressed.
penny I'd squirreled
She looked
away.
equally startled
Every
to see
odd
me.
job I'd worked.
Mrs. Warren,
I had enough
she
to
said,
cover bills for
I'm
6
Chloe
months
Parker,
if they refused to
your
pay
husband's
rent.
new client.
After that,
She glanced at
I'd
Daniel.
figure it out.
I think
I'd
we have a
always figured
problem.
it out.
Think we have a
By
problem.
noon, I was at my
Think we
cafe
have.
shift,
For several seconds,
tying my
nobody
apron with
moved.
trembling fingers.
I stood clutching
My
the velvet
boss,
box containing
Mikhail,
the
noticed
emerald
my red
necklace,
eyes and asked if I
staring
needed
at
a
my
minute.
husband and the
I
woman
told him
he'd
I was
called
fine,
Chloe Parker,
which wasn't a lie.
the same name from
Busy
the email
hands
that
kept
had
my
shattered
mind
my
from
world just
spiraling.
hours ago.
By the time my shift ended,
Client?
I'd served at least 50 lattes.
I finally managed,
cleaned the
my
espresso
voice
machine
barely
twice,
above a whisper.
and pocketed a tip jar that
Daniel
looked
stepped
heavier
toward
than
me,
usual.
confusion etched
wasn't
across his
much,
face.
But it was mine.
Megan,
When I
what's
got
going
back
on?
home, the tension
You
hit
weren't
me
supposed
like
to
a
be here
wall.
until tonight.
Mom was sitting at the kitchen
Tonight?
table, her head
I
in her
repeated
hands.
numbly.
Dad
For your
paced
birthday
behind her,
surprise.
a storm cloud in
His
a
eyes
sheath
dropped to the
polo.
velvet box in my
Marina
hand,
sat on the
then
stairs,
darted to his
Duchess
laptop
at her
bag
feet,
open on the couch.
both of them glaring at me
Understanding
like I'd just
dawned
kicked a
in his
puppy.
expression.
Maybe,
You
in
found the
their
necklace
eyes, I had.
and my notes.
Dad didn't
Chloe
waste time.
shifted uncomfortably by the
Kala,
door.
we need to talk.
I should give
now.
you two some privacy.
I dropped my bag and
No,
crossed my arms.
I said sharply,
Talk
finding
then.
my voice.
Mom
I
sniffed,
think you should
her
explain
voice
the email.
trembling.
Daniel
You
and
can't be
Chloe
serious about
exchanged
this, honey.
bewildered glances.
This is your family. Where
What
would we
email?
go? How could you do
Daniel
this to your
asked.
sister?
I pulled out my phone,
To Marina?
opened the
I
iPad
said,
synced email
the anger
app,
bubbling
and
up
thrust
so
it toward
fast,
them,
I almost
displaying the
laughed.
damning message.
You turned my room
Today's
into a
the
kennel
day.
so she could
I've
have
packed
her
everything
dog.
as we discussed.
Did anyone ask
Meet me
where
at
I would
7:30
go?
at our spot,
Dad
and then we're
slammed
free.
his palm on the table.
Chloe's
That basement
eyes
is a
widened as
perfectly
she
good
read.
space.
Then
Lots of
unexpectedly
people
she
have it
laughed.
worse. You're
The
acting
sound was so
spoiled, Kala.
incongruous with the tension
Selfish.
in the room that I
After
nearly
everything we've
flinched.
done for you,
Oh,
my
God,
laugh cut him off.
she said, covering
Everything
her mouth.
you've done for me,
I see the problem.
like forgetting my birthday,
Mrs. Warren,
or spending my
Megan,
college fund
I
on
corrected
Marina's
automatically.
private cheer camp.
Megan,
Marina flinched
I'm
at
not
that,
having an
eyes
affair with
darting
your
away.
husband.
Dad's
I'm his
jaw
client.
worked.
And I'm also
We're your
engaged to be
parents.
married this
You
weekend.
owe us respect.
My gaze dropped
I
to her left
do,
hand,
I said,
where an
my
impressive
voice low.
diamond ring
But
sparkled.
respect isn't slavery.
How had I missed that before?
I'm not your safety net anymore.
The email was about a
30
surprise
days.
I've been planning for
Figure
my
it out.
fiancé, she continued.
Mom wiped her
Daniel
eyes
has
with
been
the
helping
hem
me
of her
with
sweater.
financial arrangements to
Where will
purchase a
we go?
vacation property.
I shrugged.
Our own lake house, actually.
Maybe Marina's boyfriend
That's why we're
has a
here
spare
today,
couch.
to finalize
Maybe
the
you could use
paperwork
your
for a similar
savings.
property down the
Oh,
shore.
wait.
I looked at
You
Daniel,
spent those
who
on
was
Duchess, didn't you?
staring at me with
Marina's
growing
cheeks
concern.
went crimson.
But you left your
Duchess
wedding
whined
ring,
as if she
I said,
understood.
my certainty
I'm
beginning
not
to
discussing
crumble.
this anymore.
It was on the
I
bathroom
said.
sink this morning.
You have options.
Daniel's hand flew
Pick
to his
one,
bare ring
or
finger,
don't.
his
But in
expression
30
shifting to
days,
dismay.
You're out.
I took it
I
off to
grabbed
clean
my
it
bag
last
and
night.
went upstairs.
It was on my list.
To the basement
The
for
jeweler
now.
said the settings were
As
loose.
I lay on that lumpy mattress,
He patted his pockets.
I replayed the scene
frantically.
in my head, over
I
and
must have
over.
forgotten to put it back
Each
on.
time I felt a
Megan,
little lighter,
Did you think
a little more real.
that you were leaving me
But the next morning,
on my
the
birthday?
real fight began.
My voice cracked.
It started
The
small.
empty bed, the
Dad
cryptic email,
passive-aggressively unplugged
your
the
assistant
basement
saying you
space
took a
heater.
personal day,
So I woke up
the wine
shivering.
glasses
Mom
here.
forgot to buy
with lipstick,
groceries
the
I
rumpled
liked.
sheets,
Marina
wine
took
glasses.
Duchess for
Daniel
a walk
looked
and let her
genuinely
muddy paws
perplexed.
track all over my laundry.
We all turned toward the coffee table
didn't
where
stop
two
me.
used wine glasses
By
sat,
week 2,
one with
they'd
a distinctive
escalated.
lipstick smudge.
They tried to
Chloe
guilt-trip
stepped
me with
closer,
old photo
examining
albums.
them.
They made a
Those
big
weren't
show
there
of
when
praying
we
for my
arrived.
soul at dinner.
We just got
as
here
if I
about
was possessed by
5
greed.
minutes before you.
They even dragged our
A
pastor
chill ran
into
down
it.
my spine.
He left me a voicemail
Then
saying
who-
he'd heard I was having family
The sound of the back
struggles,
door opening
and that
answered my
forgiveness was
question.
the righteous path.
A tall man
I
with dark
didn't
hair
return his
walked in,
call.
stopping
But the
abruptly
worst
when he
came
saw
on
the
day
three of us
15.
standing in the living room.
I got home from another
Jason,
shift, bone
Chloe
tired,
exclaimed.
and
What
found
are
the
you doing
basement
here?
door locked from the
The
outside.
man, Jason,
My
looked
pillow
equally
and blanket
shocked.
were gone.
Chloe,
They'd moved my
I was
things
just dropping off
again.
the...
This time
He
out onto
stopped,
the back
noticing
porch.
Daniel and me.
In January,
Who are
I
they?
sat on the frozen steps.
This is Daniel
staring at
Warren,
the lawn.
my financial
Duchess
advisor,
barked at me through
Chloe,
the window, wagging her tail
said
like
slowly.
she knew the joke.
and his
I
wife,
called
Megan.
Nora,
Daniel,
my breath misting
Megan.
the air.
This is Jason
Hey,
Reeves,
I said,
my
voice
fiancé.
breaking for the first time.
Jason's surprise
Got a
gave
spare
way to a
couch?
flash of guilt before he
He didn't even
carefully
hesitate.
composed his
Get
expression.
over here, now.
Nice to meet you.
So I dragged my pillow and
How did
duffel
you get
bag to
in?
my car,
Daniel
turned the
asked.
key, and
The
drove
back
away.
door was unlocked.
I didn't
Jason
look back.
said too quickly.
Nora's
I
apartment
moved toward
was
the coffee
tiny,
table, pointing
but
to
it
the
felt
wine
like
glasses.
a palace compared to
Are
that
these
cold
yours?
porch.
Jason stared
She
at the
made me
glasses,
tea,
then at Chloe,
handed me her
who was
fluffiest
watching him with
blanket,
growing
and let
suspicion.
me crash on her futon.
Jason?
In the morning,
Chloe's
my
voice
phone lit up with
had
texts.
dropped to a dangerous
Marina,
octave.
You're so dramatic.
Whose lipstick
You'll
is
come
that?
crawling back.
The
Mom,
back door opened again,
please come
and a
home.
blonde
We can
woman in
work
her
this out.
20s peered in.
Dad, if you do
Jason,
this, you're
did you
dead to
find
me.
the
I stared at
She
the
froze
screen.
when she saw
I
all
thought
of
of my
us.
mother's fake tears, my
Oh.
father's fist on the table,
The pieces clicked
Marina's
together in
crocodile
an
sobs.
instant.
I thought
The
of
wine
Duchess,
glasses,
sprawled on the
the
bed that
rumpled
used to be
sheets,
mine.
the
And I
unfamiliar
blocked them.
perfume, the
Nora
woman's
found me
earring.
staring at the ceiling an hour
Jason
later.
and this unknown
"You
blonde had
good?"
been using
she
our lake
asked.
house.
I nodded.
Not Daniel
"Better
and
than
Chloe.
good?
Amber?
You sure you're ready for what
Chloe's
comes
voice
next?"
was barely controlled.
I looked at
My
her.
maid of honor?
My best friend.
A
my
thick,
real
uncomfortable.
family. And I
Silence
smiled.
filled the room as the tangled
"Yeah,"
web
I
of
said.
misunderstandings and
"I'm
betrayals
ready."
became clear.
Back at the house,
I
my
wasn't the one
family was
being cheated
scrambling.
on.
I
Chloe
knew from old
was.
neighbors who texted
And I
me.
had jumped to
Dad was
catastrophic
yelling about
conclusions
lawyers,
about
but
my
he had
own
no
marriage
case.
based on
Mom was
circumstantial
calling
evidence.
relatives, but nobody wanted
Daniel
3 freeloaders and a hyperdog.
Moved to my side, gently
Marina was
taking the
posting
velvet box
cryptic
from my
TikToks
hand.
about
I
betrayal.
was planning to bring
None
you
of
here
them
tonight.
knew what it felt like
I've
to
spent
stand on your
weeks
own.
organizing a surprise
Maybe now
party
they
for your
would.
birthday.
Nora helped me
party?
draft an official
I
eviction
echoed weakly.
notice.
Everyone's
We
coming
hand-delivered
up this evening.
Certified mail.
Olivia,
I
Eric,
imagined Dad's
your
face as
sister,
he signed
all
for
our
it.
friends.
I imagined
glanced at
Marina's
his
scream
watch.
when she read the date.
Well, in about 4
29
hours.
days left.
I took the day off to set everything up.
At work,
but I had
Mikhail
this
pulled
final
me
meeting
aside.
with Chloe first.
You need more
I
hours?
leaned against him,
More shifts?
relief
You're
washing
killing
over
it
me in
lately.
such a powerful wave
I
that
took
my
every
knees
shift he
nearly
had.
buckled.
I started sleeping
thought you were
better on
leaving.
Nora's futon than I
Me,
ever did at home.
never.
Each day
He
away
whispered,
made me feel taller,
wrapping his arm
bigger,
around my waist.
less like a shadow.
Across
But
the
then,
room,
on day
an
25,
entirely
I
different
got a
drama
text
was
that stopped
unfolding.
my heart. Not
Chloe
from
was
Mom,
confronting
not
Jason
from
and
Dad,
Amber, her
from my
voice
old
rising
bank.
with each
Suspicious
accusation.
activity detected on your
Jason was
account.
fumbling through denials
I
that
raced
grew
to the
less,
branch on my break.
convincing by the
teller
second,
pulled up my
while
records.
Amber looked like she wanted
Someone
the floor
had tried
to
to withdraw
swallow her
nearly
whole.
everything.
How long?
All my
Chloe
savings.
demanded.
The account
It was
I'd
just a
opened
few
myself,
times,
the one
Jason
only
said
I was
weakly.
supposed to access.
It didn't mean
Who
anything.
tried to do this? I
We're getting
demanded.
married in 3
the teller
days.
lowered her voice.
Daniel cleared his
It was
throat.
attempted online.
Maybe we should give them
Same
some privacy.
IP address as your family's
We
house.
stepped outside onto the
I
porch,
felt the rage
the
bubbling up like lava.
sounds of the
They hadn't just moved me to
escalating
the
argument
basement.
fading as Daniel
They
closed
hadn't
the
just
door
locked
behind
me
us.
out. Now they were
For
trying
a
to
moment,
steal what I'd
we
built.
stood in silence,
My future.
the
I
afternoon
walked out of
sun
that
warming
bank,
my
my
face as
knuckles
the
white,
emotional
my
whirlwind of the
heartbeat like a
past
drum
few
line in
hours
my
began to
ears.
settle.
They'd just made their
I'm
biggest
so
mistake
sorry,
yet.
I
was done
finally
playing
said,
nice.
leaning
And they
against
had
the
5
porch
days
railing.
left.
I
This
saw that
time,
email and
they'd
just
see exactly who they'd
spiraled.
underestimated. I didn't
Daniel
sleep
took
that
my
night.
hand,
I lay
his
on
thumb
Nora's
gently
futon,
caressing my
staring
knuckles.
at the crack in the ceiling.
I should
My
have
phone
been
clutched
clearer
to my
about
chest like a
everything.
lifeline.
And I definitely
Every hour,
shouldn't
my
have left
thoughts
my ring
looped.
on the sink.
My parents had
That was
tried
careless.
to steal my savings.
He reached
The
into his
money I'd
pocket
earned
and
pouring
pulled out my
coffee,
birthday gift,
tutoring spoiled
opening the
rich
box
kids,
again.
taking shifts
This was
nobody
supposed
else
to be the
wanted.
first part of your
Gone if they'd
surprise.
had their way. I
The
wanted to
emerald
march
necklace
back into
glittered
that
in the
house,
sunlight,
tear down
even
every
more
photo
beautiful
they'd
than I'd
ever
first
taken of me,
realized.
and show them
It's
how it
your
felt to have something
birthstone,
stolen.
he
But I
explained
didn't.
unnecessarily.
I stayed exactly where
And
I was, my
he
mind
turned the
moving
pendant
like
over
gears
to
in
reveal a
machine,
tiny inscription
refusing
on
to
the
rush
back.
shut.
Look
When
closer.
dawn came, Nora
I
found
squinted
me
at the
still
delicate
wide awake,
engraving.
my hair a
For new
mess,
beginnings.
my eyes hollow but
New
burning.
beginnings? I
She
asked,
didn't ask if I
looking
was
up
okay
at him.
this time. She
Daniel
knew
took a
better.
deep breath.
She sat beside
I
me,
thought it was
handing me a
appropriate,
cup of gas station
considering the
coffee
news
she
I got
brought before her
yesterday.
early shift.
His eyes
They really
shone
tried
with
to
what I
drain you,
now
huh? She said
recognized
softly.
as excitement,
Yeah, I said.
not guilt.
My voice sounded
Remember
like
that
gravel.
fertility specialist we
did.
saw last month?
You gonna let them?
My heart
I
stuttered.
looked at her. Nora
We'd been
had this
trying to
way
have
of
a
seeing
baby
me,
for nearly 2
the real
years,
me,
with
the parts
nothing but
I'd buried to
disappointment each
survive that
time.
house. She never
Daniel,
flinched, never looked
he called
away.
yesterday with
Not
our
even
latest
now,
results.
when I felt like
The
a
treatment
snake
worked,
shedding
Megan.
a lifetime of
The new
skin.
approach worked.
No, I said.
There's nothing
I'm
stopping
not.
us from starting
I
a
showered
family
at her
now.
place, steam
Tears
fogging
welled
the
in my
mirror.
eyes as his
I
words
stared
sank
at my
in.
reflection until it blurred.
This was what he'd
and
been
then I
planning.
did the thing I'd promised
To tell
myself
me
I'd
tonight.
never do. I
Not that he
called
was
my mother.
leaving, but that
Not
our
because I
greatest
wanted to
wish might
talk,
finally
but
come
because
true.
It was time to let her hear the
That's
steel
what
in
I
my
meant
voice.
by our new adventure
She
in
answered
the
on
card.
second ring.
He continued,
her voice small,
wiping
like
a
she'd
tear
been
from my
crying.
cheek.
Kala,
I wanted
don't
tonight
play
to be
innocent,
perfect.
I said
All our
flatly.
friends and family
I know
here
you
to
tried to
celebrate
take my
both your
money.
birthday and this new
She sucked in
chapter.
a breath.
I threw
I
my
don't know
arms
what you're
around
talking about.
him, burying my
Save it.
face against his
The bank
chest.
traced it.
I feel
Your
so
IP address.
stupid.
What? The same
Don't.
router you've
He
had
murmured
for
into
12
my hair.
years.
If I'd found what
Did
you
you think
found,
I wouldn't
I
find
probably
out?
would have
Sweetheart,
assumed the worst
we're
too.
your family.
The
We
door
needed to
behind
pay
us
the
opened,
utilities.
and Chloe emerged
Duchess
alone.
is sick.
Her
I let
eyes
out a laugh
red-rimmed,
so
but
cold I
her
startled
posture
myself.
still straight.
Your dog
I'm
is not
sorry
my
about that,
responsibility.
she
Your
said with
mortgage
remarkable
is not my
composure.
responsibility.
It seems
You
I
made
was the
me
one
the
being
invisible kid for
deceived,
19
not
years.
you.
Then you made my room her
Chloe,
kennel.
I'm
Now
so
you want
sorry,
my money too?
I said,
Kala, please.
genuine
We were
empathy
desperate.
replacing the
You
jealousy
know how
and
much your father
suspicion I'd
struggles?
felt toward her just
Marina
an hour
needs
ago.
Duchess for her mental health.
She waved away,
I closed my eyes.
my
I
sympathy,
pictured
with a
Marina's
brittle
smug
smile.
grin the day they moved
The
me
wedding's
to the
off,
basement.
obviously,
Her flippant,
but we still
flicking
have
hair.
business to
The
conclude,
designer
Mr.
purse
Warren,
she bought with
if you
Dad's
don't mind.
emergency credit card.
I'd like to finalize the
I'm
property
freezing the
paperwork.
account,
It
I
seems
said.
I'll be needing
Every
a place of
dollar.
my own after
You
all.
touch it again, I press
Daniel
charges.
looked at me
Charges?
questioningly.
Kala,
I nodded.
don't be cruel.
Go ahead.
We're your family.
I should call
We gave you
Olivia anyway.
everything.
She's probably halfway
I
here
opened
by
my
now,
eyes,
thinking she needs
stared
to
at
help
my
me bury a
reflection in
body.
the fogged mirror.
As Daniel and
gave me
Chloe went
nothing,
back inside,
and you're about
I
to
pulled out
lose
my phone to
everything.
call Olivia,
I hung
still
up.
processing
My
the
hands
emotional
shook,
roller coaster
not
of
from
the day.
fear, but from the rage
From
that
believing
had
my
lived
marriage was
dormant in my
over
bones
to
since I
discovering
was
a new
12.
beginning was on the
The day I
horizon,
found out Dad
all
spent
on my
birthday
35th
money at the
birthday.
racetrack. Since I
Some
was
celebration
15,
this was
when
turning out to
Marina's
be.
boyfriend crashed
Was turning
my
out
bike
to
and
be.
they told me to walk
Was turning
to
out.
school.
So let me
Since I
get
was
this straight,
17,
Olivia
when they
said,
laughed at my
perched
dreams
on
of
the
a
edge of
dorm
the
room
deck chair
far
beside
away,
me
saying
as we
I'd
looked
never
out
make
over
it
the
on my
lake.
own.
You
They'd
thought
been wrong
Daniel was
about a
having
lot
an
of
affair with
things,
Chloe,
but they
but
were right
actually
about one.
Chloe's
I'd
fiance
never
was
make
having
it
an
on my
affair with her
own,
maid of
because I wasn't on my
honor,
own.
and they were
I
using
had
your
me,
lake house to
and
do
that
it?
was enough. I
That
spent
about
that day
sums
at
it
the
up,
bank filing
I
fraud
replied,
paperwork.
taking a
I
sip
sat
of the
in the manager's
emergency
office
wine
for
she'd
2
brought when I
hours,
called to
answering
explain the
questions,
situation.
showing them the texts from
Olivia
Mom,
shook her head
the
in
IP
disbelief.
logs, the
And all
desperate
this happened on
excuses.
your birthday,
The manager,
the same day Daniel
a
was
kind
planning
woman
to
named
tell you
Denise,
about the fertility
offered me a
treatment
coffee
results and
patted
throw
my
you a
hand.
surprise party?
You're stronger than they know,
The
Kala,
universe has
she
a
said.
twisted sense of humor.
I know, I said
Inside
back.
the lake
By the
house,
time
Daniel
I got
and
back to
Eric
Nora's, my
were
hands ached
setting
from
up for the
clenching them all
party
day.
that would begin in less
She
than
greeted
2
me
hours.
with takeout boxes
After
and a
Chloe
bottle
had
of cheap
left,
wine.
alone,
We ate
her
cross-legged
engagement
on her
officially
floor,
terminated.
the TV muted,
Daniel had
our
called
phones
Eric to
face
come
down.
early and help
They're gonna
salvage what
hate
was
me
left of my
forever,
birthday
I said
surprise.
quietly. Nora raised
I
her
still can't
eyebrows.
believe you jumped to
Good.
my husband
Let
is
them.
leaving me so
You
quickly,
owe them nothing.
Olivia
I know,
said,
but it still
giving
hurts.
me a thoughtful look.
It shouldn't, but it does.
That's not like you, Meg.
That's how you
You're
know
usually
you're
the
not
rational
them.
one.
We sat there in
I stared
silence
out at
for
the
a
water,
while,
considering
picking
her
at cold
observation.
noodles. Then Nora
I think it was
said,
finding his wedding
"What's
ring.
your plan, Ren?"
He never takes it off.
She only used
I
my
twisted
last
my
name
own
when
ring
she
absently.
wanted the truth.
And
My
then that
plan,
email,
I said,
it seemed
is
so
to
clear.
see this through.
But
30
things aren't
days.
always what they seem,
Then
are
they're
they?
out. No
Her
more
tone
begging,
held something I
no
couldn't
more
quite
second
identify.
chances. And
Clearly
if they don't
not,
leave,
I agreed.
I didn't finish the sentence.
Though I do feel
I
bad
didn't
for
have
Chloe.
to. Nora
Finding
nodded.
out your fiancé
I've
is
got your
cheating with your
back,
maid of honor
whatever
3 days
happens.
before your wedding?
The next morning, the text
That's
started
brutal.
again.
Olivia
This
hummed in
time from
agreement,
Marina.
then reached for her
You're
bag.
ruining my life.
Speaking of your
Duchess is my
birthday,
therapy
I
dog.
still have your
I
present.
can't move.
She pulled out
I'll
a wrapped
fail my
package and
classes.
handed it to me.
It's your fault.
You didn't have
Come
to.
home.
Of course
Talk
I
to
did.
Mom.
It's your 35th.
Dad says he'll forgive
That's
you
a
if you drop
milestone.
this. Chem's
I
wife.
carefully unwrapped the gift
You're
to
so
find a beautiful
selfish.
leather-bound
You think
photo
you're better
album.
than us?
Opening
I
it,
didn't
I found
reply.
it filled with
I blocked her
pictures spanning
number.
my entire friendship
On
with
day
Olivia,
28, I did something
from
that felt like
college
an
through my wedding to
exorcism.
holiday gatherings
I
and
drove to the house.
weekend trips.
Nora came with me.
Liv,
Her tiny
this is
frame like
amazing.
an armored guard beside me.
Keep going,
We parked
she
on the
encouraged.
street. The lawn
last
was a
page
mess.
is the best part.
Old toys, dog
I
poop,
flipped to the
a
final
dead flower
page
bed.
where I found a
The
single
place looked
photo of
smaller
Olivia
than I
and me from
remembered.
just last month,
Sadder.
arms around
I
each other
unlocked
at
the
her
front
lakeside
door.
cabin.
Duchess barked
Tucked
at
into
us,
the
tail wagging,
corner of the page
clueless.
was a small
Mom
envelope.
was on the couch, wrapped in
Inside
a
was a
blanket,
card that read,
staring at the TV
"For your
without
next
seeing
chapter."
it. Dad
Your
was at the
journey
kitchen
inspired
table,
me to
a
start
stack
my
of
own.
unpaid bills spread
Appointment
out like a crime
confirmed for
scene.
next Tuesday
Marina
at
was
2
nowhere
p.m.
to be seen.
Dr. Melissa
Mom
Chen,
looked up.
fertility
Her eyes were
specialist.
puffy. Kella,
I looked up at
please.
Olivia,
Save
stunned.
it, I said.
You're
I'm not
starting
here to
fertility
argue.
treatments?
I'm here to
She
check
nodded,
the house.
suddenly looking
to remind
nervous.
You have 2
After
days.
seeing how
Then
you
you're
and
out.
Daniel have handled
Dad's
the
jaw
whole
twitched.
process,
Where
the
are we supposed
disappointments,
to
the
go?
hope, the perseverance,
You should
it
have
made
thought
me
of that
realize I
before
don't
you
need to
moved me
wait
the
for the
basement.
perfect
Mom's
relationship
voice
to
broke.
start the family I've always
We're
wanted.
your parents.
Liv,
And I'm your daughter.
I reached for her
but
hand.
you didn't remember that when
You're
you
going to
turned
be
my
an
room into a
amazing
kennel.
mother.
Dad
I hope
pushed
so,
back his chair
she
so
said,
hard it
squeezing my
scraped the
fingers.
floor. You'll
I've
regret
lined signed up
this,
a donor
Kala.
through the clinic's
Family is
program,
forever.
and I was
I met
hoping,
his glare dead
well,
on.
that you might
So is
come with me to
freedom.
the first appointment.
I walked through my
Since
old
you're
room.
practically an expert
Duchess
on the
followed
process
me,
by now,
her nails clicking on
I'd
the
be
hardwood.
honored.
The velvet dog
Tears
bed,
welled in
the
my
squeaky
eyes for what
toys,
felt like the
the dog
100th
hair.
time that
It
day.
was all there,
But these were
like a
happy
monument
tears.
to their betrayal.
Our kids
I
could
opened
grow
the
up
window,
together.
let the stale
That's what I was
air
thinking.
out. In my mind,
She
I can
smiled,
already see
then
this
glanced
space
at her watch.
repainted, cleaned,
We should probably
reborn.
go help the guys.
Mine.
Your
Nora
guests will
snapped
be arriving
photos for
soon.
the record. Proof,
Inside,
they'd
Daniel and
trashed the
Eric had
place.
transformed the
When
living
we stepped
room.
back outside,
String lights
the wind
twinkled
felt
from
like
the
an
ceiling
embrace.
beams. A
That was
happy birthday
badass,
banner
Nora
hung
said.
across the
But
fireplace,
they'll try something.
and several gift
You know
bags
that,
sat on
right?
a side table.
I know.
The
I
wine
said.
glasses that had
Let them
caused
try.
so much confusion
That
earlier
night,
were
I
long
filed the
gone,
final eviction
replaced by
paperwork.
champagne
I
flutes.
paid a courier to serve it in
arranged
person.
neatly on a
No more
tray.
chances.
Daniel
No more
looked up as
guilt.
we entered, his
At
face lighting up when he
11:59
saw
p.m. on
me.
day 30, they'd
Even
be
after
out.
8 years of
Or the
marriage,
sheriff would
that
make
look
them.
still made my
Day
heart skip.
29. I slept
Just in
maybe
time,
2 hours.
he said.
Jolted awake by
We
every
need a woman's
phantom
opinion
sound.
on the food
Nora's
arrangement.
futon felt like
I
a
moved
raft
to his
in an
side,
ocean I
leaning
couldn't
into
calm.
him as he slipped
Day
an arm
30.
around my waist.
I sat on the hood of my
Everything
car,
looks
parked at the end of the
beautiful.
block. Nora brought
Wait
me
until you
coffee
see
and
what else I
donuts.
have planned,
We
he
watched
murmured
the
close
house
to
from
my
a
ear.
distance.
That
the
necklace
lights
was
flickering
just the
on and
beginning.
off. Silhouettes
Eric cleared
moving
his
behind the
throat.
curtains.
And that's my
At
cue
noon,
to check on the
the
ice
sheriff's cruiser
situation.
pulled up.
He headed
2
for the
officers
kitchen,
stepped out.
Olivia following
Knocked
to
on
help.
the door. Mom
Alone
opened it.
for a moment,
I couldn't hear
Daniel
her from
turned
here,
to face
but I
me.
knew that pleading look.
Are we okay?
Dad's voice
After
boomed.
everything?
I saw him
That
pointing
happened
at
today.
me, saw his rage
I
spilling
considered
out.
the question,
Marina
thinking
emerged
about the
behind him,
emotional
her
whiplash
arms
of the
crossed,
past several
her hair
hours.
wild. Duchess
We're
barked,
more than okay,
confused by the
I
chaos.
said finally.
The officers
But
talked.
I think we need to work on our
Papers changed
communication.
hands.
If I'd
Mom
known
started
about your meeting
crying.
with Chloe,
Marina slammed
or
the
why
door
you'd
so
taken off
hard
your
the
ring,
glass rattled.
you're right,
One of the
he agreed
officers
immediately.
walked toward me.
And if
I
I'd told
stood
you
up,
about the
my
fertility,
knees trembling, but my
specialists
spine
call
straight.
right away instead of
Miss
planning this
Wren?
elaborate
He
surprise.
said, "That's me."
But then it
He
wouldn't
nodded.
have been a surprise.
It's done.
I
They
pointed
have until
out.
midnight. If they're
Daniel
not gone,
smiled,
call us.
tucking
We'll
a strand
handle
of
it.
hair behind my ear.
Thank you.
True.
I said.
Though I could
And
have
I
done
meant
without
it.
the part
I
where
watched the cruiser drive
you
off.
thought I was leaving
I
you.
watched my family
I shuddered
through
at
the
the
living room
memory of
window,
those dark
pacing
hours.
like caged animals.
It felt so
For a second,
real, Daniel.
guilt flickered.
Reading
a
that
dying ember.
email,
Then I
finding
remembered
the evidence
basement,
here.
the locked door.
I've never
the
been so
missing money.
terrified.
I turned away.
I'm
got in
sorry.
my car. Drove back
His
to Nora's.
expression grew serious.
At 11:50 p.m., my phone
I never
buzzed.
want you to feel that
Marina
kind of fear again.
This time from a new number.
From now on,
You ruined
no
everything.
secrets.
I
Even for
didn't reply.
surprises.
I didn't need
We tell
to.
each other everything.
At 12:01
good or
a.m.,
bad.
the house was mine.
Deal.
No more barking.
I
No
sealed
more
the promise with a
basement.
kiss,
Just me.
which was interrupted by
standing
the
in
sound of
ashes
car
of what they
doors
thought
closing
they owned,
outside.
and ready to build something
First guests
better.
are here.
The morning
Daniel
after
said.
they left,
Ready
I
for
stood
your
at the
party,
edge of the
birthday girl?
driveway with the keys in my
I
pocket.
nodded, pushing
The
aside
house
the
looked
lingering emotional
hollow,
exhaustion from
like
earlier.
someone had scooped out the
This was still my
insides and left
birthday,
only the bones.
and now there was even more
a
to
single
celebrate.
bag of trash slumped by the mailbox.
Over the next hour,
I could see through
our
the front window.
closest friends
Empty
and family
shelves,
arrived.
overturned
My sister
chairs,
Kate and her
a
husband
scratch
from
on
the city,
floor where Duchess
colleagues
had dug
from
her
both our
claws in one
workplaces,
night during a
neighbors from
thunderstorm.
back home.
Nora pulled up behind
Each new
me.
arrival brought
She
another
didn't
layer
say
of
anything
warmth
at
to the
first.
gathering.
She just parked
Another
her beat-up
reminder of the
Corolla,
community
stepped out,
we'd
and
built
stood
together.
next to me. We
When
both
everyone
stared
had
at the house
assembled,
like it was a
Daniel
grave
clinked
we'd
his
come to
glass for
visit.
attention.
You ready?
Thank you all
She
for coming
asked
on such
finally.
short notice
I
to celebrate
shrugged.
Megan's
Ready
birthday,
as I'll ever
he
be.
began.
We
Some of
stepped
you may not
inside.
know this,
The door
but
groaned
today
like
has
it was
been
protesting.
eventful.
The smell hit me
A ripple
first.
of laughter moved
Stale
through the
dog
crowd.
food, cheap
Eric had
candles,
apparently been filling
a faint
people
hint
in
of mildew
on the
from
day's
basement.
misunderstandings.
They'd left it all.
But that's
I
not
walked
the
through
only
the
reason we've
hallway,
asked you here.
My boots
Daniel
echoing
continued.
on the floorboards that
We
Dad
also
always
have some
said he'd
news to
fix,
share.
but never did.
He looked at me,
The
silently
kitchen
asking
was
permission
worse
to
than I'd
proceed.
expected.
I nodded,
Crumbs,
stepping
a
closer
sticky
to
ring
his
on the
side.
counter where a coffee mug had sat
After
too
a long journey,
a stack of
he
dishes
said,
in the sink
his
that
voice
nobody
thick with
bothered to
emotion.
wash. It felt
We've
like they'd
received
abandoned
news
the
that our
place in a
latest
hurry.
round of fertility
Or maybe they
treatments
wanted
has
me
been
to see it
successful.
like this.
The
Like they were
path is
daring
clear
me
for
to
us to
regret
start the
pushing them
family
out.
we've been hoping
Nora
for.
picked up a photograph off
Cheers
the floor
erupted,
near the living
along with
room
a few
couch.
happy tears
It
from
was a
those who
picture of
knew
me
how
when I
long
was
we'd been
6,
trying.
missing front teeth,
My sister pushed
hair in
through the
wild
crowd to
braids,
hug me
grinning
fiercely.
like I owned the
I'm
world.
so happy for you,
I wondered what that girl would think
she
of me now.
whispered.
Would she be proud?
As the
Or would she
celebration
wonder
continued
why
around
I'd let
us,
it all get
I
this
found
bad
myself
for so
watching
long?
Daniel across the
We
room.
spent that first day
He was
cleaning,
engaged in
scrubbing the
conversation with
sticky
Eric and a
floors,
few others,
tossing the broken
but his eyes
toys
kept
and
finding
chewed-up dog
mine,
beds.
as if he couldn't
Nora
quite
opened
believe how
all the
close we'd
windows,
come to
letting the cold
misunderstanding
spring
each other
air
so
blow the ghosts
profoundly.
out. It felt
I touched the
symbolic.
emerald pendant
The
now
house had
hanging
been a
around my
prison
neck
for so long,
for new
and now
beginnings.
it was a canvas.
Despite
Halfway
the
through
chaotic
dragging
dramatic
dragging Marina's
start,
old cheer
my
trophies to
35th
the
birthday
trash.
had turned into
Nora
a day of
stopped and looked at
unexpected
me.
revelations and renewed
So
commitment,
what are you going to do with this
both
place?
to each other and to the
I
future
sat
we'd
down
been
on the
working
old
toward.
couch. The springs
Penny,
dug
for your
into my
thoughts?
back. I don't know
Olivia
yet.
appeared at my
Maybe
elbow,
fix it up.
offering a
Maybe
fresh
sell
glass
it.
of sparkling
Maybe
water.
keep it and finally make
Just
it mine.
thinking about how
All I
differently
know
this
is
day could
it's
have
not theirs
ended,
anymore.
I admitted.
That night,
If I hadn't
slept in my
found
old
Daniel's
room for the
notes,
first time
or if
since
I'd
they'd
left
moved me
before
to the
he
basement.
arrived,
I
With
pulled the ratty
Chloe?
comforter over my
But you
shoulders
didn't,
and lay there
she pointed
staring
out.
at the ceiling.
You
It
stayed.
felt both
You gave him
foreign
a chance
and
to
familiar,
explain.
like sleeping in a childhood dream.
Because I wanted
But
answers.
the house creaked
Not because I
differently now.
trusted him in that
The
moment.
barking was
I
gone.
confessed.
The tension
The
was
guilt
gone.
still fresh.
It was just me and my
Olivia
heartbeat
considered
echoing off
this.
the walls.
Trust
In the
isn't
morning,
always
I
blind
found
faith,
Nora in the
Meg.
kitchen making
Sometimes
a
it's being
list.
willing to
She'd
listen
been awake
even when
since
everything
dawn.
seems to point in the wrong
Okay,
direction.
here's what we need.
Before
she
I
said,
could respond,
tapping her pen
the sound
on her
of breaking
clipboard like a
glass drew
general
everyone's
planning an
attention to the
invasion.
kitchen doorway,
Paint,
where
spackle,
Eric
a new
stood
door
looking
for the
mortified
basement.
beside a
A
shattered
real
champagne
lock for your
flute.
room.
Sorry,
Not the flimsy
he
crap
called
they put on
sheepishly.
after Duchess trashed
Got a little
everything.
enthusiastic with the toast
I
preparation.
laughed, and it startled me.
As people
I
laughed and
couldn't
moved
remember
to help
the last
clean up,
time my laugh
Daniel
didn't
made
sound
his
like
way
a
to my
defense
side.
mechanism.
Having fun?
You're serious
he
about
asked,
this?
his fingers finding
Nora
mine.
grinned.
The best
course I
birthday I
am.
never
You're
expected.
not doing this alone.
To have.
Not anymore.
I replied honestly.
The next week blurred
It's not
into
over
long
yet,
days and
he said with
longer
a
nights.
mysterious smile.
I worked my
I
cafe
have one
shifts
more
in the
surprise
morning,
planned for
then
midnight.
came home
Is it a
and tackled
surprise I'm
whatever
going to
disaster my
like?
parents
Or
had
another
left
one that
behind.
might give me a heart attack?
Nora was there
I
for every
teased.
ripped carpet,
Definitely the
every
first
stubborn
kind,
stain,
he assured me.
every loose floorboard.
Though after today,
we painted
I'm
the
thinking
living
I should
room a
probably
warm,
just tell you.
soft yellow.
No,
It
I
felt
interrupted.
like sunlight,
Surprising.
like the sun I'd always wanted to
Myself.
feel inside these walls.
Keep it a surprise.
We tore out the
Despite
rotting
everything,
basement
I
carpet
trust
and
you.
replaced it with cheap
And I
laminate
did,
found on
more
clearance.
deeply than I'd
Every
realized
time I
during
drove a
those
nail into
dark
the wall,
hours
it
when
felt
I'd
like I was
believed the
nailing the
worst.
coffin shut on who I used to be.
Because when
But it
faced
wasn't
with
all
what looked
triumphs.
like
There were
irrefutable
nights
evidence,
when I sat on the porch
some part
steps,
of me had
staring at
still
my
needed to
phone, wondering
understand,
if Marina would
to hear
text,
his side of
if
the
Mom
story.
would call, if
That
Dad
was
would
why I'd
apologize.
stayed at the lake house
They
instead of
didn't.
driving away.
Some part of me still ached
That,
for it.
I realized,
even though I knew
was
better.
the foundation we
Nora
would
caught
build
me
our
once,
next chapter on.
Phone clutched in my hand,
Not blind
tears
trust,
brimming.
but the
You
commitment
don't
to
owe them
listen,
your tears,
to seek
she
understanding,
said, sitting
to give
beside
each other
me.
the benefit of the
You already
doubt,
gave
even
them
when
everything.
circumstances suggested
I
otherwise.
nodded, wiping my eyes.
As the evening progressed
It's
and I
just-
moved among
it's
our
quiet,
friends
you know?
and family,
I always thought if they were
I found
gone,
myself
I'd feel
filled
free.
with a
But I
sense of
just feel
anticipation rather than dread about
empty.
what midnight might bring.
Good, she said.
Whatever Daniel had
Empty
planned,
means space.
whatever
Space
challenges
for
our
you.
future held,
Space
we
for
would
whatever
face
comes
them
next.
together,
One
clear-eyed,
night,
honest,
2 weeks after
and
they
connected.
left, I was carrying out
My
trash
35th
bags when I
birthday
saw a car
hadn't
parked across the street.
Started the way I'd expected,
Headlights off.
but it was ending exactly where I
Windows
needed to
tinted.
be,
My
where I
stomach
needed to be,
twisted.
where I needed.
I knew
As
that
the evening
silhouette.
progressed, the
Dad's old
lakeside
truck.
cabin filled with the
I
warm
stood on the
buzz of
porch,
conversation
arms
and
crossed,
laughter.
heart hammering.
Despite the chaotic start
He
to my
didn't get
birthday,
out.
I found myself
He just sat
genuinely
there,
enjoying the
engine
celebration
rumbling,
Daniel
until I
had
went
planned.
inside.
Friends
When I peeked
mingled
through the blinds
throughout
an
the
hour
tile,
later,
open
the
living
truck was
area,
gone.
spilling onto the deck
I
where
wanted to
string
tell
lights
Nora,
reflected off the
but I
dark water
didn't.
beyond.
I didn't want her to worry.
My sister
I
Kate
told
cornered me
myself
by
he
the
wouldn't do
refreshment table,
anything.
her
He
expression
didn't
still a
have the
mix of
guts.
amusement and
He'd spent his
disbelief.
whole life barking
Only you
orders
could
and
mistake
empty
a surprise
threats.
party
But
for an
something
affair,
about that shadow
she
on my
teased,
street made
refilling
the hair
her
on my
wine
neck
glass.
stand up.
Most people just
The
pretend to be
next day at
surprised when
work,
they find
Mikhail
out.
cornered me in the back room.
Very funny, I
Hey,
said,
you okay?
nudging her
You've
with
been
my
off
elbow.
lately.
You try
I
finding
forced
your
a
husband's
smile.
wedding.
I'm
Ring
good.
abandoned on the bathroom
Just a lot
sink
going
and see where
on.
your mind goes.
He didn't buy it.
Kate's smile softened.
You know, if you ever
Seriously,
need
though,
anything,
are you okay?
a ride,
That must have been a
alone,
terrifying
whatever.
few hours.
You're not alone, Kala.
I considered her question,
I wanted to hug him,
watching
but I
Daniel
just
across
thanked
the
him and
room
went
as he
back to
chatted
steaming milk,
animatedly with a group of
focusing
our
on the hiss
friends.
and bubble, the
I'm
hum of
better
the
than
cafe.
okay,
It
I
felt
admitted.
safer than thinking
It
about
was
the
like
truck.
having the rug
About the
pulled out
what
from
ifs.
under me and then
That
suddenly
night,
finding
I heard
solid
something on the
ground.
porch.
Again,
A creak.
it makes you
low
appreciate
thump.
that ground even more.
I grabbed the old bat from
Poetic,
the coat closet
Kate
and cracked
remarked.
the door open.
But I'm still going to
Nothing but
tease
the
you
wind.
about this for
But
years to
on the
come.
welcome mat was a note.
I'd expect
scribbled
nothing
in Dad's
less.
handwriting.
I laughed.
We could have made this
The conversation
work.
shifted
did
as
this.
Kate updated me on her
Family
latest
is
work
forever.
project.
I tore it up and
But I
flushed
found
the
my
pieces.
attention drifting to where
I called
Olivia
Nora.
stood alone on the deck,
This time, I
gazing
didn't
out at
pretend
the
it didn't
lake.
scare me.
Something about her
Change
posture,
the locks,
shoulders
she said.
slightly hunched,
Get cameras.
arms wrapped
And
around
Kala,
herself
if he
despite the
comes
mild
back,
evening,
you call the cops.
suggested she needed
No
company.
mercy. I did
Excuse
exactly
me,
that.
I said to
The
Kate,
next day,
making
I
my way
replaced every
outside.
lock.
Olivia
Installed
didn't turn
cheap
as I
security
approached,
cameras.
though she
The
must
kind
have
you
heard the
stick to
deck
your
door
front
slide
door with
open.
double-sided tape.
I leaned against the
Every
railing
beep
beside
made me
her,
jump.
giving
But at
her
least
space
it
to
was
speak
mine.
first if she
Mine
wanted.
to protect.
I'm having
Spring
second
turned to
thoughts,
summer.
she
The
finally
house
said,
started to look
her
like a
voice
home.
barely audible
I
above
found
the
a thrift
lapping of
store
waves
couch that
against the
didn't
shore.
sag.
About
A
the
second-hand
fertility
desk
treatments.
where I could work on my online
Because-
courses.
Because,
I even
what
bought
if
a
I'm
new
being
bed.
selfish?
Not the lumpy
She turned to
mattress
face
they'd
me,
banished to the basement.
vulnerability evident in
real
her
one.
expression.
Memory
Choosing to
foam.
have a child without a
Soft.
partner. without
Mine.
that built-in support system you and Daniel
Sometimes I'd
have.
stand at the window and watch
I had
the
never
street,
seen my confident,
half expecting
decisive
to see
friend
that
so
truck.
uncertain.
but it didn't come
Liv,
back.
being a single
Maria
parent by
texted
choice
once,
isn't
a
selfish.
single word.
It's brave.
Why?
Is it?
I didn't answer.
Or is
There was
it
nothing
unfair to
left
the
say.
child? Her eyes shimmered
Nora
with
and I
unshed
built new
tears.
rituals.
I mean,
Sunday
look at
brunch
today.
in the backyard.
When you thought Daniel was
Late
cheating,
night painting
you weren't just
marathons when we
devastated for
couldn't sleep.
yourself.
She
You were
brought over
devastated for
candles
what
that
it meant
smelled
for
like
your
cedar
future
and
family,
cinnamon.
your plans together.
Little by little, the
I
house stopped
reached for her
smelling
hand.
like them.
Every family
smelled
looks
like
different,
me.
Liv, and any child
One
would be
night we were
lucky to
sitting
have
on
you
the
as their
porch,
mother,
the stars
with
sharp
or
and
without a
bright
partner
above
in the
us.
picture.
Nora nudged
I just
me.
keep thinking about
So,
the
boss
deck door
lady,
slid open
what's
again,
next?
and Eric
I
stepped
thought
out.
about it.
There
The
you are,
word
he
Diane
said,
next
with
used
a
to
relieved
terrify me.
smile.
Now it felt
We're
like
about
an
to
open
cut
door.
the cake.
I don't
Olivia
know,
quickly
I
wiped
said
her eyes
honestly.
and plastered on
Maybe
a smile.
I rent the spare room. Maybe
Can't
I
miss
finish
that,
my degree.
she said with forced
Maybe I
cheerfulness, squeezing my hand
exist for a
once before
while.
following Eric
Nora
inside.
grinned. You
I
deserve
lingered for a
that.
moment
You know,
longer,
just existing.
making a mental
I
note to
nodded.
continue this conversation with
Yeah,
her later.
maybe I do.
Olivia had been my
When she
rock
left
through
that
years
night,
of
I stayed on
fertility
the
struggles.
porch, knees hugged to
I
my
intended
chest,
to be hers
the
through
warm
whatever
wind
path
threading
she
through my
chose.
hair. For the
Inside,
first time in a long
Daniel was
time,
waiting with a
I didn't
beautifully
feel like a
decorated
ghost
cake
haunting my own
ablaze with
life.
candles.
I felt real.
As everyone sang
solid.
happy birthday,
But
I
deep
found
down,
myself
a small voice
overwhelmed
reminded
with
me
gratitude.
they weren't gone
Just
forever.
hours ago, I'd been
Dad
convinced
didn't
my
forgive.
marriage was over.
Marina didn't
Now
forget.
I was surrounded by loved
Mom?
ones, wearing the
She'd
emerald
always find a
necklace
way to
Daniel
twist
had given
the knife
me,
one last
looking
time.
forward to the future
I
we
didn't
would
know
build
how,
together.
or
Make a
when,
wish,
but I knew
Daniel
the peace
whispered as
wouldn't
the
last
song
forever.
concluded.
Some shadows
I
don't
closed
leave
my eyes,
quietly.
drew a deep breath,
Some come back when
and
you
blew
least
out all
expect them.
35 candles in one
I
go.
just didn't know they'd come back so
The party
soon.
continued for
A
another
month
hour
passed
before
the
guests
next blow
began to
fell.
depart,
It was the
each
first
leaving with
weekend in
warm
June,
hugs and
and
congratulations
the air
on
was thick
both
with
my
heat that
birthday
stuck to your
and our
skin.
fertility news.
I'd spent the day scrubbing the
Soon
last of the
only
basement
Kate,
walls,
her husband
scraping
Olivia,
off
and
old
Eric
water stains
remained,
and Dad's
helping with
half-hearted
cleanup
patchwork
while
jobs.
suppressing yawns.
Nora had run out to grab us
You
iced
should all
coffees.
head back,
When she
Daniel
came back,
suggested,
she found me
noting
sitting on
the
the
time.
basement steps.
It's almost
Sweat dripping
midnight
down
and
my
the drive
neck,
is pretty
my
dark.
hands trembling around my phone.
Are you sure?
What happened?
Kate asked,
She asked,
glancing
dropping
around
the
at the
coffees on
remaining
dusty
party
landing.
debris.
I
We
held
can
up the
stay and
letter.
finish cleaning.
The envelope was crumpled.
Absolutely,
The
I
return
assured
address
her.
stamped with
The
a
rest
law firm
can wait
I'd
until
never heard
morning.
of. Inside,
After a final round
just
of
a single
hugs and
sheet,
goodbyes,
a demand
we
for
watched their
mediation.
headlights disappear
Your
down the
father is
gravel
contesting
driveway,
the property transfer.
leaving Daniel and me
He claims
alone in the
duress and
suddenly
mental
quiet cabin.
incapacity. Nora read it.
Did you
her
have
jaw
a good
ticking with every
birthday,
line.
despite everything?
You've got to be kidding me.
He asked,
He signed
wrapping
it
his
over.
arms
It's
around
done.
me from behind as we stood in
Apparently
the doorway.
Not, I said.
The best?
My voice
I
flat.
said truthfully.
Apparently,
Though
he
maybe
thinks he
next
can
year we
scare
can
me
skip
into
the
giving
part
it
where I
back.
think you're leaving me.
Nora sat down
Deal.
beside me,
He
shoulder
kissed the
pressed
top
to
of my
mine.
head.
Let him
It's almost
try.
midnight.
You've got the paperwork.
Ready for your final
You've got
surprise?
receipts. You've got
Curiosity
witnesses.
piqued. I turned
I
in his
didn't
arms.
answer right away.
I thought
My
the
mind
necklace and
spiraled
party
back to that night.
were the surprise.
The final signing
Those were
at the
just the
bank,
beginning.
Dad's handshaking,
Taking
not
my
from
hand,
confusion,
he led me
but from
back
the
out
weight
onto
of
the deck.
overdue bills.
Close your
The
eyes.
second mortgage.
I complied,
The threats of foreclosure
feeling the
he
cool
never
night
told
air
anyone
against my
about.
skin as
He
Daniel
begged me to
guided me
help.
further onto the
And
deck.
I had.
The sounds
I'd
of the
taken it
lake
on,
surrounded us.
stupidly
Gentle
believing it would
waves,
earn me
distant
some
loon
small corner
calls,
of respect.
the rustle of leaves in the
Instead,
breeze.
It just made me a bigger target.
Okay,
Kala,
he said,
Nora
positioning
said,
me carefully.
her tone gentle
Open them.
but fierce.
I opened my
This is
eyes
why
to
you've
find
got
the
the
lake
lawyer on
transformed.
retainer. Remember?
Dozens of paper lanterns
I nodded.
floated on the water,
I know.
their
It's
soft
just,
glow creating
they
a
never
path
stop.
of light from our dock
It's like,
out into the darkness.
no matter what I do,
Above, the night
they
sky
find
was
another way
alive
to
with
remind
stars,
me I'm the enemy.
more visible here away from
Nora
city
squeezed
lights.
my hand.
Daniel,
Not the enemy.
I breathed.
The threat.
It's beautiful.
You're the first person they
Look
can't
there.
break.
He pointed toward the floating
that night,
lanterns.
I stayed up drafting my reply
As I
with the
focused,
lawyer's help.
I realized they
we
weren't
filed
randomly
a formal
arranged.
response,
The
including the
lanterns
signed
formed
documents,
letters on the
bank
dark
statements,
water.
notarized
Forever.
letters, ironclad.
The lake where we first
I
fell in
imagine
love,
Dad,
Daniel
red-faced
said
and
softly.
ranting to some cheap
The
attorney
place
about
where
how
we
his daughter
scattered your
turned on
father's
him,
ashes.
how he deserved to have his
Where
castle
we
back.
decided to start trying for a
But part of me
family.
wondered if this was
And
more
now,
than pride.
where we
Maybe
begin
he
a
didn't
new
want the house
chapter.
back for himself.
Tears
Maybe
blurred
he
my
wanted it to
vision as
ruin
the
me.
meaning of his
To
gesture
drain my
sank in.
savings, one court fee at a
Daniel had
time.
always understood how special
I
this
wouldn't let
place
him.
was to me,
I'd fought too hard.
how connected I felt to
Still,
the memories
anxiety
we'd created
snuck in
here.
like smoke
How
under
did
a
you
door.
manage this without me
I'd fall
noticing?
asleep with my phone on my
Eric
chest,
and I set them up
waiting
while
for
you were
more
talking with
threats.
Olivia.
Marina
They're on
stayed quiet.
timers, set to
Mom,
light up at
too.
exactly
It was
midnight.
just Dad,
As if on
throwing
cue,
stones at my
my
windows
phone
from a
chimed the
distance.
midnight hour.
Week after week,
My
the
birthday was
notices
officially
came.
over. but
depositions,
something new was beginning.
mediation dates.
I know today
all
didn't go
designed
as
to
planned,
exhaust me.
Daniel
I'd come
continued,
home from
taking
work,
both my hands in
shoulders
his.
burning from pulling
But
double
I meant what I
shifts,
said earlier.
and find another
No more
envelope
secrets
on my
between
porch.
us, even for
Some
surprises.
nights, I'd see that truck
Full
parked up the street
transparency from
again,
now on.
just a shape behind the windshield.
Full transparency.
Watching.
I agreed.
Waiting.
He hesitated,
Nora
then
wanted
reached
me to
into
stay
his
at her
pocket.
place. But this house,
Which is why there's something
my
else I need
house,
to tell you.
felt like the last
Something
stand.
I've been saving for the right
I wouldn't
moment.
give them the satisfaction of
My
seeing
heart
me
skipped
run.
as he pulled out an envelope.
On day 45,
What is it?
mediation day, I sat
The
in a
complete
conference room
results
that
from
smelled
Dr.
like
Chen.
stale coffee and cold
He handed me
printer
the
ink.
envelope.
Dad sat across
I
from
only
me,
told you the
his
good
lawyer,
part,
a
that the
slick
treatment
man in a
worked,
shiny suit
that
who
there
wouldn't meet my eyes.
are no more barriers.
Dad's hands drummed
there's
on the
more.
table. His
My
eyes
hands
darted around
trembled
the room,
slightly as I
avoiding me.
opened the envelope,
He looked
pulling
older
out
than
the
I
medical
remembered.
report inside.
Smaller.
I scanned the
My
document,
lawyer,
medical
Ms. Cruz,
terminology jumping
a
out at
fierce
me,
woman with a halo
until I
of
reached
black
a highlighted
curls,
section
placed
halfway
a
down the
reassuring
page.
hand on my arm.
My breath caught.
We've got this,
Is this
she whispered.
Is
The
this
mediator,
saying what I think
a
it's saying?
middle-aged man with tired
Daniel
eyes,
nodded,
called
his
the
expression
session
a
to
mix of
order.
excitement
Dad cleared his
and
throat
apprehension.
and leaned forward.
The
I
hormonal
was
treatment was
tricked,
more effective
he
than
said,
anticipated.
his voice
Dr.
wobbling
Chen
just
says the
enough to make
chances
it
of
sound
multiple
rehearsed.
embryos successfully
My daughter
implanting has
pressured me.
increased
She
significantly.
used my stress against
Multiple,
me.
I repeated,
scoffed.
the word
Ms.
feeling
Cruz shot
foreign
me a
on my
warning
tongue.
look, but didn't stop me
As
when I
in,
leaned in.
Twins
came
are a
to me,
strong
I said.
possibility.
You
he
begged me
confirmed.
to save your credit.
Maybe even triplets.
You asked me to take the loan.
The world seemed to tilt
I did
slightly as I
everything you
processed
asked.
this new information.
And then you tossed me in the basement
After
like
years
a
of
stray
trying
cat.
for just one baby,
Dad's lawyer
the
raised a
prospect of
hand.
multiples was
Let's
overwhelming.
keep this civil.
I wanted to tell you right
Civil?
away,
I barked
Daniel
a laugh.
continued, watching my
He stole
reaction
from me.
carefully.
He tried
But
to
I
empty
didn't
my
want to
savings.
overshadow your
He
birthday
turned my
with what
bedroom
might be
into a
stressful
kennel for
news.
Marina's dog.
Stressful?
And I'm supposed to be civil.
I looked up from the report,
The mediator
a startled
droned on
laugh
about
escaping
options,
me.
settlements, finding
Daniel,
common ground.
This is,
Dad wouldn't look at
incredible.
me, just kept twisting his wedding
You're not
band like a
overwhelmed?
nervous tick.
of course I'm
I
overwhelmed,
wondered what Mom
I
thought
admitted,
about this.
but in
If
the
she was
best
at
possible
home,
way.
wringing her hands,
We've wanted this for
blaming
so
me
long.
for pushing him this
One
far.
baby, two
Marina
babies,
probably
however
didn't
many
care.
we're blessed with.
She'd find someone else to fund
Relief
her
washed
next
over his
comfort animal.
features as he pulled
In
me
the
into an
end,
embrace.
The mediator agreed with
Against
Ms.
his
Cruz.
chest, I added,
The transfer was
though
legal.
we might need a bigger
Dad
house.
had signed willingly.
He chuckled,
The bank records
the sound
proved he knew
rumbling
what he
through
was
him.
doing. If he wanted
One
to
step
push
at a
it,
time.
he could take it to court.
We stood there on
But
the
he'd have
deck,
to pay his own
holding
fees.
each other beneath the
He didn't have
star-scattered
the money.
sky, the
I knew
glowing
that.
lanterns casting
knew
dancing
that.
reflections on the water.
When we left, he followed
After
me into
the emotional
hallway.
turbulence of the
His
day,
lawyer stayed behind,
from despair
pretending
to
not
relief
notice.
to celebration,
Kala,
this quiet
Dad
moment
said,
felt
his
like the
voice
true
low,
gift.
harsh.
Happy birthday,
You
Megan,
think you've won?
Daniel whispered.
You think this makes you
and
better
happy
than me?
new beginning, I
I
replied,
faced him.
sealing the moment
hallway
with a
lights
kiss as
buzzed
the floating
overhead,
lanterns
flickering
continued to
slightly.
spell out our future
I
on the
don't
dark
need to
water,
be
our
better than
future on
you,
the
Dad.
dark water, our future.
I
2
just
weeks after
need
my
to be done
birthday,
with you.
life had settled into a strange
His
new
eyes
normal.
narrowed.
Daniel and I had
Families
returned to the
forever.
city, our daily routines
this
resuming with
family,
one
I said.
significant difference.
Not for me.
I now
He
attended
flinched like I'd
fertility
hit
clinic
him.
appointments 3 times
For
a
a
week,
second,
preparing
I
my body
almost
for the
felt
next
sorry
phase
for
of
him.
treatment.
The man
The
who
possibility
gambled
of
away my
multiple
college
babies
fund,
loomed in our
who let my mother
conversations,
treat me like a
both
placeholder,
thrilling and
who
terrifying.
turned his back every time I needed
We should start
him
looking
most.
at bigger apartments,
Almost.
Daniel remarked one evening as we
Then
sat
I
on our
turned
living
and
room
walked
couch
away.
reviewing real estate
Ms.
listings.
Cruz fell into step beside
If we're
me. You did
potentially
good,
having
she
twins or
said.
triplets,
He's not
this
going to push
2-bedroom
this.
isn't
He
going to
can't.
cut it. Let's not get
What if
ahead
he
of
does?
ourselves, I
I
cautioned,
asked,
though I'd been thinking the same
my
thing.
voice cracking.
We don't even know if the
Then we fight
implantation will
him.
be successful
You're not
yet.
alone, Kala.
Daniel set aside his
We stepped
laptop
out
to
into
take my
the blazing
hand.
sun.
I know,
I squinted
but
at
Dr.
the
Chen
sky,
seemed very
my shoulders
optimistic at
sinking with
yesterday's
exhaustion
appointment.
I couldn't name.
She had been.
Ms. Cruz
My
squeezed
hormone
my
levels
shoulder
were
before she
ideal,
left,
and everything
disappearing
was
into the swirl
progressing
of downtown
perfectly.
traffic.
The embryo
I called
transfer
Nora,
was scheduled for
told her
next week,
everything,
and
my
then would
words
come the
tumbling out
anxious
in a
2-week
rush.
wait to see if pregnancy
Come
occurred.
home, she said. I'll
I
make
just
us
don't want to
pasta.
jinx anything,
Home,
I admitted.
I echoed.
We've been disappointed too many
it felt
times.
different in my mouth.
Fair.
Not
Enough,
the house
Daniel
I just
agreed.
defended,
But maybe we
but
could
the
just
warmth of her
casually
voice.
browse.
the
No
certainty that
commitments.
someone wanted me.
I was
That
about to
night,
respond
I
when
lay
my
in
phone
bed.
buzzed with an
The new
incoming
bed,
call.
soft and clean
Checking the
and
screen,
entirely mine,
I was surprised to see
staring at
Chloe
the
Parker's
ceiling.
name.
I
We'd
felt the
exchanged
fear
numbers
dissolving,
after the lake
drip
house
by drip,
incident,
until
but I
only
hadn't
resolve was
expected to
left.
hear from her again.
I didn't know what
It's
the next
Chloe,
fight would look
I
like.
told Daniel, answering
But I
the
knew
call.
one thing for certain.
Hello?
I'd never let
Megan?
him win. I
Her
drifted
voice
off to
sounded
sleep to
strained.
the sound of Nora
I'm
humming
sorry to
from the
bother
couch,
you, but
a
I didn't know
lullaby in
who
the
else to
dark.
call.
This
I
story
sat
took
up
us a
straighter,
long time.
concerned by
If
her
you
tone.
like it,
What's wrong?
subscribe.
Are you okay?
Now, back
Not
to the
really.
story.
She gave a hollow
Z-Libe.
laugh.
Summer settled
I'm at
in like a
Lakeside
heavy
Hospital.
blanket. I
There's
patched
been
up
an
the last
accident.
of the peeling paint.
My stomach dropped.
I let myself dream
What
about
happened?
renting out Marina's old
Jason
room.
was driving with Amber.
Maybe to a student
The
who
names of
needed a
her
fresh start,
ex-fiancé
like I
and
once
former
did.
maid of honor
I
sent a
went to my
jolt of
shifts,
recognition through
pocketed
me.
my tips.
They were
and
hit by
came
a drunk
home to a
driver
house
on
that
Highway
felt less
16.
haunted every day.
It's
Sometimes
pretty bad.
the old ghosts stirred.
Oh my God,
I'd
Chloe,
catch
I'm so
myself
sorry.
flinching at creaks
I
on the
gestured to
porch,
Daniel,
at
mouthing
headlights rolling
hospital
past
to
the
explain
windows
my
late at
alarmed
night.
expression.
But each morning I woke
But
up
why are you
stronger,
there?
quieter
After what they
inside.
did,
I was washing
that's the
dishes one
thing,
night when my
she
phone
said,
buzzed.
her voice
An
cracking
unknown
slightly.
number. I almost let it
Jason
go to
listed me as
voicemail,
his emergency
but something in me
contact
wanted to
and
hear
apparently never
the final
changed it after
dagger.
everything.
It was Marina.
The hospital called me.
Her voice was
And when I got
slurred,
here,
words
I
tumbling
found out I'm
together
still
like she
his
was
medical
half drunk,
proxy.
half crying.
That's a lot to deal
Paula?
with, I
I know you
acknowledged,
hate me.
trying
I
to
get it.
understand
I
why she
deserve
was
it.
calling me
But
specifically.
Duchess,
The doctors need decisions
she's
made,
sick.
she continued,
Mom can't afford
about
the
his
vet.
care.
Dad's
And
gone.
I don't know what
He
to do.
left. I'm alone.
We were together for
We're
4
alone.
years, Megan.
Silence
Despite
bloomed
how it
between
ended,
us,
I can't just-
wide and jagged.
You can't just abandon
Don't call
him.
me again.
I finished
I
for
said,
her,
my voice
understanding
calm.
dawning.
Take care of your dog,
But you also
take
don't
care
want
of
to face this
yourself.
alone.
but don't make your problems
Exactly.
mine. Not
Relief
anymore.
colored her tone.
She sobbed something.
Would you...
A word that sounded like, please,
I know this is a
asterisk.
huge imposition,
Then the line went
but
dead.
would you mind
I
coming to
stood
the
at
hospital?
sink, hands
just for moral
submerged in
support?
lukewarm water.
I don't
staring
have
at my
many friends in the
reflection dark
city,
window.
and after
The house was
canceling the
quiet.
wedding, most of
My
our
house.
mutual friends chose sides.
My rules.
I glanced at
Sometimes
Daniel,
freedom
who was
sounds like
watching me with
silence.
concern,
Sometimes
and made a
silence
split-second
is everything
decision.
You need.
Of course.
But just as
Text
I
me the
rinsed the
details.
last plate,
I'll be
my
there as
phone
soon as I
buzzed
can.
again. An email
After
this
hanging
time.
up, I
From an
quickly
address
explained
I
the
didn't
situation to
recognize.
Daniel.
The subject line
That's
made my stomach clench.
unexpected,
Legal notice.
he said,
Petition
looking
to reverse
confused.
transfer of property.
Why would she
Fraud
call you of
allegation.
all people?
Dad hadn't given up.
I think
He'd
I might
found
be the
another
only
angle.
person
next
who
fight was
witnessed
here.
what happened
And
without
this
being
time,
emotionally
I'd show him
invested
exactly
in either
who he was
side.
messing with.
I reasoned,
The next
already
morning,
gathering
the
my
fear
purse
was
and
gone.
jacket.
I woke up with
Plus,
something else
finding
in its
out
place.
about Jason and Amber's
Something
affair
hotter,
happened at the
heavier,
same time I discovered
fury.
you weren't actually
The kind that sat
leaving
in
me.
my chest
There's
like
a
an
weird
ember
connection
waiting
there.
for wind.
Daniel
I sat on
nodded
the edge of
slowly.
my bed, phone in hand.
Do you want me to come with
rereading
you?
the email until the words
No,
blurred.
I think it's better if it's just
Fraud.
me.
Dad was
I
accusing
kissed
me
him
of fraud.
goodbye.
As if I
Don't wait
forced him
up.
to sign
This
the
might
deed
take
when
a
we
while.
both knew he was the one who begged
The
me to
hospital
save the
was a
house from
30-minute
foreclosure.
drive across the city.
The difference now?
As I navigated
He'd
evening
found some
traffic,
bottom-feeder
I
lawyer
reflected on
willing
how
to push it
quickly life
further.
could change.
Nora
From
found me in the kitchen.
planning a wedding
her
to
hair a
making
tangled
medical
halo,
decisions for an
eyes still
ex-fiancé
gritty
in
with
just 2
sleep.
weeks.
She
It
took
put my
one
own
look at
birthday
me
crisis
and
into
didn't bother with
perspective.
hello.
I found Chloe
What
in the
happened?
surgical waiting room,
He filed
looking
again.
smaller than I
This
remembered
time,
in an
he's saying I
oversized
forged
sweater,
his signature.
her dark hair pulled
I
back in a
slammed
messy
the coffee pot
ponytail.
down harder than I meant
When she
to.
spotted me,
Hot liquid
relief washed
splashing
over
onto my
her
wrist.
exhausted
I didn't even
features.
flinch.
Thank you
Nora
for coming,
grabbed a towel and
she said
mopped
as
it
I
up.
sat beside her.
You've got the paperwork.
I know it's
The bank
strange.
cameras. The
How are they
notary.
doing?
He can't
I
win.
asked gently.
Doesn't matter.
Amber's
I
in
said.
stable condition.
It's not about winning.
Broken arm,
It's about draining
concussion,
me dry.
some internal
She
bruising.
squeezed my
Her
shoulder.
voice was detached,
Then we
clinical.
fight back. Again.
Jason's still in surgery.
We spent that
His
morning in my
injuries are
lawyer's
more
office,
severe.
Ms. Cruz
Collapsed
pacing
lung,
like a wolf
ruptured
behind her
spleen,
desk.
head trauma.
He's testing
They're
you,
not sure
Paula.
if...
He wants
She
to see
trailed
if you'll
off,
back down.
unable to finish the
You
thought.
won't.
I placed
He's
my
not
hand
just
over
testing
hers.
me, I said.
I'm
He's
so...
telling me I don't get to be
Sorry,
free.
Chloe.
Not ever.
The thing is,
Ms. Cruz
she
crossed her
continued,
arms.
staring at the
He wants
institutional tile
mediation
floor.
again. We'll bury him
I'm
in
still
proof.
so angry with
If he
him.
tries to push it
Furious,
to court, we countersue
actually.
for harassment and
But I
legal
don't want him
fees.
to die.
I nodded.
Of course
The rage
not,
in my
I
chest
agreed.
pulsed.
Those
steady
feelings
and
can exist
alive.
simultaneously.
Do it.
You
I'm
can
done
be
playing
angry with
nice.
someone and still
The
care
next
about
week
what
was a
happens
blur
to
of
them.
affidavits,
The doctors need to
photocopies,
know about
emails.
continuing aggressive
Nora and I
treatment
barely
if
saw
things go
daylight.
south.
She
She
camped
finally
out
looked
on
at
my
me, her
couch
eyes
with her
red-rimmed.
laptop,
I'm
helping me
still legally
organize every
authorized to
shred of
make those
proof.
decisions,
The
at
security
least until
footage
our
from the
would-have
bank,
been wedding date
the
when the
notarized
proxy
signatures,
expires.
The emails
But
he'd
how do
sent
I know
thanking
what's
me for
right?
saving the house.
It was an
I
impossible
read
simple
read them
question.
so many times
One
I
I
could
couldn't
recite them in
answer
my
for
sleep.
her. What
And
would
every
Jason
night,
want?
I lay awake in my
Chloe
new bed, listening
considered
for
this,
footsteps on the
twisting
porch,
the empty ring
the creak
finger
of
on
the
her
old
left hand.
floorboards, the bark
He
that would
always
never
said
come
he wouldn't
again.
want to be kept alive by
Duchess wasn't
machines
here
if there was no
anymore.
hope.
Marina had
But he's
taken
only
her when she
36.
left. Or
There
so
might
the
be
neighbors
hope, right?
said. Part of me
Before I could
wondered if the
respond,
dog had been the
a
last
surgeon in
shred
blue,
of warmth in that family.
Scrubs approached.
Now it was gone.
Ms. Parker?
And
We've
the
completed the
ghosts
first
rattled
phase
the
of
windows in
surgery.
their place.
First phase of surgery.
3 days
Chloe
before the
stood,
hearing,
gripping my hand
Dad
for
showed up at
support.
the cafe.
How is he?
I was behind
We've
the
stabilized
counter,
the lung and
apron
removed the
dusted with
damaged portion
espresso
of the
grounds.
spleen.
When
The
I saw
surgeon
him
explained.
standing in line,
But the head
his
trauma
face
is concerning.
half hidden under the
There's
brim
significant
of a battered
swelling in the
baseball
brain.
cap.
We're
I
inducing
froze.
a coma
the
to
milk
give it time to
frother
heal.
whining in my hand.
And his prognosis?
Nora,
Chloe's
who'd
voice
picked
was
up an
barely
extra
audible.
shift just to watch my
The
back,
next 24
saw him
hours are
too.
critical.
She was at
The
the
surgeon
pastry
said
case,
carefully.
arms crossed.
We need your consent for
eyes
additional
sharp.
procedures if
Kala,
necessary.
she murmured.
Chloe signed the
"Do you
forms
want
with a
me to
shaking
handle this?"
hand. The surgeon's
"No," I
explanations
said.
washing over her.
My voice surprised
When
me.
he left, she
Steady,
turned to me with hollow
cold.
eyes.
I want
I
him
should
to
call
see.
his parents.
I'm not afraid.
They live in Arizona.
Dad stepped
They
up
should
to
be
the
here.
counter, sliding
That's
the
a good
cap back
idea.
to meet my eyes.
I agreed.
He looked worse than he
Is
had at mediation.
there anyone else who should know?
Hair unwashed,
His brother.
eyes bloodshot.
And
I wondered if he'd been
I
sleeping
suppose
in that
Amber's
truck.
family, though I don't
Coffee,
have their
he
contact
rasped.
information.
Black.
We
I
spent the next
punched it into
hour
the
making
register.
calls,
That'll
arranging
be
flights for Jason's parents,
$2.75.
and providing information
He
to various
like
family
he'd expected
members.
me to fold.
Throughout it all,
You're
Chloe
really gonna
remained
do this?
remarkably composed,
Do what?
though I could see the
I
toll
asked,
it was
pouring
taking
the
on
drip
her.
coffee.
When we
Hold you
finally had a
accountable?
moment of quiet,
His lips
I
twisted.
ventured a question that
You
had been
think you're better
bothering
than
me.
me. I slid
Chloe,
the cup across the counter.
Why did you come?
No.
After
I
what he
said.
did to you,
I think I'm
many
free.
people would have told the
There's a
hospital to
difference.
contact someone else.
He didn't touch the cup.
She was silent for
didn't
so
pay,
long I thought
just
she might
stared
not
at me
answer.
like he wanted to carve out
Then,
a piece of me to keep.
because I know what
Then
it's
he
like to
turned
be
and
alone
walked
in
out,
crisis.
the doorbell chiming like
She
a
picked at a
funeral
loose
bell.
thread on her
Nora
sweater.
was at my side in an instant.
3 years ago,
You okay?
I was in a car accident.
I looked down
Not
at
as serious
the
as
untouched
this,
coffee.
but bad enough.
I'm done letting him haunt
Jason
me.
was traveling for work,
When
and
the
I had
hearing
no
day
family
came,
nearby.
I wore my best thrift
A stranger
store
stayed
blazer.
with me in the
Nora
ER
drove me
until my friend
downtown,
could
her
arrive.
car humming like a
I never
talisman
forgot
against the
that
dread
kindness.
coiling in my gut.
Her
Miss
answer
Cruz
silenced
met us
me.
outside the courthouse, her eyes
Despite the
gleaming.
betrayal she'd
We're going to
experienced,
crush him, she
despite the
said.
public
He's got
humiliation
nothing.
of canceling a wedding
Inside,
days before the
Dad sat
event,
alone this time.
she chose
No
compassion
lawyer,
over
no
resentment
smug
when it
suit to
mattered
hide
most.
behind. Just him.
You're a good
and
person,
a stack
Chloe
of rumpled
Parker,
papers
I said
that
finally.
looked like they'd been folded
She
and
shook her
unfolded
head.
100 times.
I'm not sure about
When
that,
the judge asked
but
him
I'm
to
trying
present
to be the
evidence,
person I'd
he
want to
sputtered,
encounter if our
flipping through the
positions were
pages like he'd
reversed.
lost something crucial.
That's the
Miss Cruz
definition of
handed
a good
over our
person in
file.
my book.
Neat, labeled,
A nurse
unshakable.
appeared
The
to
judge
inform us
barely
that we could
glanced
see
at Dad
Jason
before
briefly.
dismissing the claim.
Chloe hesitated,
No fraud,
then asked if I
no
would come with
duress.
her.
This case is
I
closed.
agreed,
One
following
more
her down the
frivolous
sterile
suit,
hallway
and
to
you'll
the
be liable
ICU.
for all court costs.
Nothing prepares you for
Dad's
seeing
shoulders
someone in a
sank.
medically
He
induced
didn't
coma.
even look at me when the gavel came
Jason
down.
lay unnaturally
Outside, Nora
still,
squeezed my hand
tubes
so
and
hard I
wires
winced.
connecting him to various
"It's over,"
machines.
she said.
His face swollen
"No,"
and bruised
I
almost
said.
beyond
"He'll try
recognition.
again." But
Beside
as we
me,
walked back to
Chloe
the car,
drew in a sharp
the
breath.
sun warming my face,
I'll give you a
I
moment,
realized something.
I whispered,
It didn't
stepping
matter
back
if he
toward the
did.
door.
Every time
No,
he came at me,
she
I'd
said
be ready.
quickly.
Every lie,
Please stay.
every threat,
She
every
approached
cheap
the bed
trick,
cautiously,
I'd face it
as
all.
if afraid to disturb
Back
the equipment.
home, I threw
After
the
a
final
moment's
ruling
hesitation,
on the table.
she
The
reached
paper
out to
felt
touch
heavier
Jason's
than its
hand,
weight,
the
like
one without
proof
the
that
IV
this
line.
house, this life,
We
was
had
really
everything
mine.
planned,
I cleaned
she
the
said
kitchen
softly,
that night, scrubbing
not
the
looking at
counters
me.
until they
The
gleamed.
honeymoon in
I
Bali,
ordered
the house
pizza.
we were buying,
Nora brought
the
over
5-year
cheap
plan to
wine.
start a family
we sat
once
on
we
the
were
floor,
established.
laughing too loud,
She
the
withdrew her
tension
hand.
finally bleeding out of my
Now I don't
shoulders.
even know if
When
he'll
I
wake
crawled
up,
into
and
bed,
I'm not
the
sure how
house
I
was
feel about
silent.
any of it.
Not the cold,
You don't have to
suffocating silence
know
of
right
when
now,
they first left.
I told her.
But a warm,
You just have to be
steady
here,
hush that
making the
felt
best
like
decisions
peace.
you can
The
with the
porch
information
light
available.
glowed outside
The
my
feelings
window,
will sort themselves
a
out.
beacon against whatever shadows might
We
lurk
stayed for
out
only
there.
a few minutes
I
before the
woke
nurse
up at dawn
indicated
to
it was time to
birdsong
leave.
And the smell of
In the
fresh
hallway,
paint.
Chloe suddenly
I
stopped
padded
and turned to me.
downstairs, barefoot, coffee
Amber's
in
room
hand,
is
and
down
opened the
there,
front door.
she said,
The street
nodding
was
toward
empty.
another corridor.
No truck.
I should check
no
on her
note,
too,
just
shouldn't
the hum
I?
of a new
That's
day.
what a good person
I
would
stood
do.
on the porch, breathing
The
it
question
in.
wasn't really
This
directed
freedom,
at me,
this
but I answered
victory
anyway.
Stitched together with 1,000
Only
tiny
if you feel
acts of
ready for
defiance.
that.
I thought about
Being a
that
good
girl
person
in the
doesn't mean
photo,
putting
the one
yourself
with the
through
missing teeth
unnecessary
and wild
pain.
braids.
Chloe
She'd be proud,
considered
I
this,
decided.
then squared her
She'd
shoulders.
see me and know I made it out.
I want to see
Not
her.
just from the basement, but
Unlike
from the belief
Jason,
that love meant
Amber
being
was
less.
conscious, though
I was
clearly
more now.
medicated.
More than their
When
bitterness.
she saw Chloe in the
more than their
doorway,
ghosts.
her eyes
And whatever they
widened
threw
with
at me
fear and
next,
shame.
I'd be ready.
You can wait outside if you
By
want,
the time July rolled
Chloe
around,
told me.
I'd learned how to
Are you
sleep
sure?
without checking the locks
She nodded.
every hour.
I need
The
to do
porch
this
light
part
became my
alone.
small, stubborn
I waited
beacon.
in the hall,
The house still
unable to
creaked,
hear their
the pipes still
conversation,
moaned,
but
they
watching
were
through
my
the window
sounds
as
now.
Chloe
Not ghosts,
spoke briefly
not
to her
threats.
former friend.
Nora had
The
started
exchange
coming
lasted
over every
only a
Friday
few
night.
minutes before
We called
Chloe
it
emerged,
Freedom Friday,
her expression
our made-up
unreadable.
holiday where we'd push
Did
all
you
the
get what you
furniture to
needed?
the edges of the
I
living
asked
room,
as we walked
order
back to the
cheap
waiting
takeout,
area.
and dance
I
like
think
idiots
so.
to songs we were too embarrassed
She didn't
to admit we
elaborate,
loved.
and I didn't
Sometimes,
press.
when the laughter died down,
Jason's
we'd
parents
sit
would arrive
cross-legged on the floor,
early the next
backs
morning.
against the freshly painted
After
walls,
making sure
and
Chloe
talk
had
about
everything she
we'd
needed,
been too
a
afraid
place to
say when
stay,
we were teenagers.
transportation,
You
food,
know,
I
Nora
prepared
said
to
one
leave.
night, her voice sleepy.
Thank you,
I used to
she said
envy
as we
you.
stood in the hospital
I choked
parking
on my
lot.
soda.
For coming,
Me?
for staying,
Why?
for not
Because
judging
you were
me.
so contained.
There's nothing to judge,
Like you
I
had this
assured
shell
her.
nobody could crack.
What you did tonight took
and no matter how
incredible
much
strength.
they pushed you down,
She shook her
you
head.
didn't break.
It still hurts
She
so
looked
much.
at me then, eyes
Seeing
soft.
them, thinking
I know
about what
you
they
didn't feel
did.
strong back
But
then,
somehow,
but you
being
were.
here,
You
making
still
these
are.
decisions,
I wanted
it's
to
helping me
believe her.
let go.
Some nights
Does
I
that make
did,
sense?
but others,
Perfect
the shell
sense,
felt like a
I
prison
replied,
built around my
thinking
own
of my
ribs.
own journey on my
Safe,
birthday.
but
How the fear
suffocating.
of losing Daniel
That next morning,
had ultimately
I woke
led
up
to a
to
deeper
soft knock on
appreciation
the
for what
door.
we had.
I hadn't been
Different
expecting
circumstances,
anyone.
but similar
Nora
lessons.
always texted first. I peeked through
As
the
I drove
peephole.
home,
It
I
was
found
Marina.
myself reflecting
She
on the
looked
strange
nothing like the
connection that
golden
had
girl
formed
I'd grown
between
up
Chloe
next
and
to.
me.
Her hair was
A
stringy,
misunderstanding
pulled
had
into
brought
a
us
low
together
ponytail
initially,
that looked more like
but something
an
deeper
afterthought.
had developed.
Dark circles
A
bruised the skin
recognition
under her
of
eyes.
shared
And in
humanity
her
in difficult
arms,
moments.
Duchess, thinner
Daniel
now,
was waiting
her fur
up despite
patchy
my
in
earlier
spots, but
instruction,
still wagging her
relief
tail when
washing
she
over
saw
his
me.
face when I
I
walked
opened
through
the
the door.
but didn't step aside.
How did
What
it
do
go?
you want, Marina?
He asked,
She shifted
pulling
her
me
weight,
into a hug.
eyes darting behind me
Intense,
like she
I
half
admitted,
expected Mom
sinking
or Dad to appear.
onto the couch beside him. Jason's
I didn't
condition
know
is
where
serious.
else to go.
Chloe
She
handled it
lifted
with
Duchess
incredible
slightly.
grace.
She's sick,
And how
Carla.
are you?
She needs help.
His
I
concern
can't
was
afford
evident.
the vet. I didn't know
This
who
can't
else
have
would.
been easy,
No,
especially
I
with
said,
everything we've got
the
going
word
on.
a blade I didn't want to hold.
I thought about the embryo
She's
transfer
not my
scheduled for next
responsibility.
week.
Marina
The possibility
flinched,
of
hugging
multiples.
Duchess closer.
The life-changing journey we were
Please,
embarking on.
I know I messed
Compared
up.
to what Chloe
I
was
know
facing,
Mom and Dad did,
making life or
but
death
Duchess
decisions for the
didn't.
man who had
She
betrayed
doesn't
her.
deserve to
Our
suffer.
challenges felt manageable.
I looked at the dog.
Even blessed.
Her eyes so
I'm
trusting.
good,
so
I said,
unaware of the
meaning
mess
it.
she'd been dragged through.
Better than good,
the
actually.
bed she'd once claimed
Being there
that used
tonight,
to be mine.
it put
the
things
nights I'd listened to
in
her
perspective.
claws skittering above my head
Daniel
while I
nodded,
shivered in the basement.
understanding without needing
Marina's
further
eyes
explanation.
filled with tears that glistened,
Life can change
but
in an
didn't fall.
instant.
I'm not asking
Which
for
is why
me.
we shouldn't wait
I'm
to start
asking for
apartment
her.
hunting, I added,
Against every
surprising
stubborn
myself
bone
with
in
the
my
decision.
body, I stepped aside.
I don't want to jinx anything,
One night,
but I also
that's
don't
it.
want to waste time being
Tomorrow
afraid of
you
disappointment.
find another option.
His eyes lit up.
Marina's shoulders sagged.
Really?
She slipped
Really?
inside, setting
I
Duchess
curled
on
into
my
his
rug
side,
like she was placing
suddenly
down something
exhausted,
fragile.
but content.
Duchess sniffed
Let's embrace
around,
all the
tail
possibilities,
wagging
scary
weakly.
as they
Marina
might
stood
be.
there, twisting her fingers.
As Daniel
Do
held
you
me,
have
I thought
anything
again
for
of
her to
Chloe
eat?
standing beside
I
Jason's
spent my
hospital
last
bed,
bit on gas
confronting
to
a
get
future
here.
nothing
I bit
like the
back
one
every,
she'd
I
planned.
told you so, sitting on
Her
my
courage
tongue.
in the face of that
I went to
uncertainty
the
was a
kitchen,
powerful
grabbed
reminder.
the leftover rotisserie
None of
chicken
us
I'd
know what
planned for
tomorrow
dinner,
holds,
and shredded
but we
it
can
into a
choose how
bowl.
we face
Duchess
it,
licked my
with
hand
fear
when I set
or
it
with
down.
hope, with
Marina
resentment
watched me with
or
that
with
same
grace.
helpless expression
I
I'd
was
seen
choosing
1,000
hope.
times growing up.
And after witnessing
Calla,
Chloe's
I don't know
strength
what to do.
tonight, I was more
You
certain
figure it
than
out,
ever that it
I
was the
said,
right choice.
my voice
Ever that it was
colder
the
than I
right
felt.
choice. I know.
You always do.
He covered my hand
Nora
with
came
his.
by that evening.
But whatever
She stepped
happens,
inside,
we face it
spotted
together.
Marina curled up on my
My
couch
phone
like
buzzed
she
with a
owned it,
text message.
and raised an eyebrow
Expecting
at me.
Olivia,
You want me
I
to
was
kick her
surprised to
out?
see Chloe's
She
name on the
whispered.
screen.
No, I sighed.
Jason woke up this
Just
morning.
Let her
Doctors
stay
are
tonight.
cautiously
It's
optimistic.
Duchess. She's
Thought
sick.
you'd want to know.
Nora watched me for
Good
a
news
beat,
about
then
Jason,
nodded.
I told
You're a
Daniel,
better
showing him
person
the
than I am.
message.
No,
In the
I
week since
said.
the accident,
I'm just
I'd been
tired of
checking
fighting
in with
battles
Chloe
that aren't mine
regularly,
anymore.
offering support as she
Marina
navigated
barely
the
spoke the
complex
rest of the
situation
night.
with her ex-fiancé.
She kept one hand on
That's a
Duchess's
relief,
back,
Daniel said.
whispering soft
Are you going to
nonsense into
visit
her
them
ear
again?
like it would keep her alive.
I had gone to the hospital.
I caught
twice
myself
more
wondering
since that
if
first
Marina
night.
really loved that
Once
dog.
to meet Jason's
Or if
parents,
Duchess was
who
just
were
another thing
quietly
she'd
grateful
use
for
up and
Chloe's
toss aside
presence
when it
despite
got
the
hard.
canceled wedding.
I hated that
And
I thought
again,
that.
when Amber was
But the
discharged,
thought stuck.
needing a ride since
I
her
went to
family
bed
lived
that
out
night
of
with my
state.
door cracked just in case.
Maybe tomorrow,
I couldn't
decided.
help it.
Today,
Old habits
I just
die
want to go
hard.
home and rest.
I half expected to wake up
The
to
next
an
2
empty
weeks
house,
stretched into
my
what
wallet
felt like an
gone,
eternity.
Marina's promises
I
dust in
returned
the
to
wind.
work, trying to
But when
focus
the
on
sun
normal
rose,
activities
she was
while
still
hyper-aware
there,
of every
curled
twinge and
around Duchess
sensation
like
in
a
my
barrier.
body.
The dog's breathing was worse.
Was that cramp implantation
shallow,
or just
rattling.
digestive discomfort?
She needs a vet.
Was my fatigue
I said
pregnancy
quietly,
or
squatting
anxiety?
next to the couch.
Every day was a new exercise in restraint,
Marina looked
stopping
up,
myself
her
from
eyes
taking an early
bloodshot.
home pregnancy
I don't
test
have
that
money,
might give
Calla,
false
please.
results.
I should have
Daniel
said no.
was
I should
my
have
rock,
handed her a phone number
distracting
for a
me with
clinic
apartment
and told her to
viewings,
figure it out
cooking
herself.
special meals,
But
and never
Duchess's
once
tail
betraying his
thumped
own
once,
anxiety,
weakly.
though I knew he
And
felt
I
it
couldn't
too.
shut the door on that.
10 days
Not
into the
again.
wait, Olivia
I called
called with
Nua,
her own
who drove
news.
us to the cheapest vet
I'm
in
officially
town.
on the schedule,
Marina
she
held
announced.
Duchess in her
Donor
lap
selected,
like a child,
treatment
whispering
protocol
apologies
approved.
into her fur.
I start hormones next.
I paid the bill.
Month.
More than I'd spent on myself
That's
in
fantastic,
months.
Liv.
It
Have you
burned,
told anyone
but it was
else?
done.
Just
the vet
my
gave
parents.
Duchess an IV
My
and
mom
some
is
meds.
thrilled. She's been desperate
She'll be
for
okay,
grandchildren.
he said,
My dad's
scribbling on
taking
his
a bit
chart.
longer to adjust
But
to the
she
idea,
needs
but he'll come
stability.
around.
She can't be dragged
And how
from
are you
couch
feeling
to
about
couch.
everything?
I looked at
She
Marina.
paused, scared,
Did you hear that?
excited,
She
suddenly
nodded,
aware
her
that my
tears
apartment has
finally
sharp
falling.
corners and no
I'm
childproofing.
sorry, Calla.
She
I'm
laughed,
so sorry.
then sobered.
The
But
words
mostly
didn't
grateful
fix
that I have
anything.
you to talk to
But
about
they
all
were the
of this.
first real ones
Your
I'd
journey
heard from
gave me
her
the
in
courage to
years.
start my own.
When we got home,
Her
Marina
words touched
lingered
me
by
deeply.
the door.
We'll
Can I
figure it out
stay?
together,
Just
whatever
a little
happens.
while, until I figure
Speaking
things
of
out?
which, any
No,
symptoms
I
yet?
said.
She
You
asked
can't,
cautiously.
But Duchess can.
Nothing definitive.
Marina's
admitted.
shoulders crumpled.
Some fatigue.
Where will I go?
A little nausea this morning,
You're
but
smart,
that could be
I said.
nerves.
You'll
The blood
figure it
test
out,
is in 4
like
days.
I did. She opened
I'll
her
be
mouth
thinking
to
of
argue,
you, she
but
promised.
I was done listening.
And Megan?
I shut the
Thank
door
you for
behind
supporting
her.
me through this.
Duchess curled up on my
After
old
we hung
quilt,
up, I
her
found myself
breathing
reflecting
steadier.
on how much had
Nora
changed
leaned
since
against
my
the
birthday
wall,
just a month
arms
ago.
crossed.
The day I'd
You sure about
thought
this?
was the end of my marriage had
No,
instead
I
become a
said,
new beginning.
But it feels right.
Not just for Daniel and
we
me,
spent
but
the
for
night
Olivia
watching old
too.
movies.
And in an
Duchess
unexpected
snored
way.
at my feet.
For Chloe, as she
When Nora
rebuilt her
left,
life.
I stood at the window.
That
watching the
afternoon,
street
I
for any
received
sign
another
of
text
Marina's
from
car.
Chloe.
It didn't come
Jason's
back.
being
By August,
discharged tomorrow.
Duchess was mine.
His parents are
By
taking him
default,
back to
by
Arizona for
circumstance,
recovery.
by choice.
Would you want to meet for coffee
I took her
before
to
I head
every
back to
checkup.
work next week?
Learned to brush her fur so it
We
didn't
arranged to
match.
meet at a small
Even
cafe
found an
near
old
my
toy
office
she
the
loved
following
more
day.
than the velvet bed
When
she'd
I
once
arrived,
claimed in my
Chloe
room.
was already there,
The
looking
irony wasn't lost
more
on me.
rested than when I'd
The
last
dog
seen
who
her
took
at
my
the
space
hospital,
was now sleeping
though
at my
still
feet,
carrying tension
my
in her
protector in
shoulders.
the empty dark.
Thank you for coming,
Some nights,
she said
I'd
as I
hear
joined
the truck
her.
on the street.
I wanted to see you
Dad,
before everything goes
maybe,
back to
or just my
whatever
imagination.
normal is now.
A ghost refusing to
How
die.
are you holding up?
But when I looked
asked,
at Duchess,
accepting
I knew
the
one
latte
thing.
she'd already ordered
Some
for me.
inheritances you don't choose.
Better than expected.
But you can choose what
She
you do with
twisted
them.
a
I
napkin
repainted
between
the
her
basement.
fingers.
The last room
Jason's
that still
parents have
smelled
been
like
surprisingly
fear.
kind to me,
Bright white
considering
walls,
everything.
Shelves with
His
books,
mother actually thanked me
small
for being
studio
there those
corner where I
first
could
crucial
study.
days.
My space.
That couldn't have been easy
my
for any of
choice.
you.
I didn't
It
hear
wasn't,
from Marina again.
but it
or
was
Mom,
healing in a strange
or
way.
Dad.
Chloe looked
The
up,
silence
meeting
was its
my
own
eyes
answer.
directly.
Family
I got
is
to say
forever,
goodbye properly.
Dad had said.
To the
He
relationship,
was wrong.
to the future we
Family
planned,
ends when you say
to the
it
hurt
does.
and anger I've been
Cheyenne
carrying.
sigh here.
And Amber?
One night, I stood in
That's
my
more
backyard
complicated.
under the stars.
We
Duchess
talked
at my
briefly
side,
before she was
Nora
discharged.
on the porch
She
with a mug of
apologized,
tea.
cried a lot.
The wind smelled like summer
Chloe
storms
shrugged.
and fresh grass.
I don't think we'll
I
ever
looked
be
up at the
friends
sky
again,
and felt
but I
something
don't
break
actively
open in my
wish her
chest.
ill anymore,
Not
which is
pain.
progress.
Not anymore.
Definitely
Just
progress.
space.
I agreed.
What now?
What about you?
Nora asked.
She asked, changing the subject.
I laughed. the
Any
sound
news on
echoing
the
off the fences.
baby situation?
Whatever I want.
She gestured vaguely.
Duchess pressed her head
toward my
against my
midsection.
leg, warm and solid.
Not yet.
A reminder
The definitive
that some things
test is in
survive the
3
worst
days.
storms.
I hesitated,
Inside the house,
then decided
the
to
lights glowed
confide in
soft
her.
and steady.
This
A
morning I
lighthouse
thought I
built
felt
from all the
different,
pieces they tried
but
to
I've
take
been
from
fooled
me.
by symptoms
I didn't
before.
know what the next fight would look
Chloe
like.
nodded
But
sympathetically.
I knew one thing. I'd won this
The mind
round,
is powerful.
and that would have to be
When
enough.
I was planning the wedding,
August
I
bled
convinced
into
myself I had
September
food
like a
poisoning
bruise
from the
fading
stress.
Slow.
Turned out it was
The
just
nights got
anxiety.
cooler.
Exactly.
I'd wake up to find Duchess
and with
curled
potentially
against my
twins
legs,
at stake,
snoring
I'm
gently,
trying not to get
her tail twitching
hopes
at
too
dreams
high.
I'd never know.
twins.
The basement was a studio
eyes
now, not a
widened.
prison.
That would be quite the
The
plot
walls were
twist.
lined with thrift store
My life
shelves
seems to
stacked with
specialize in
books.
those lately.
Textbooks for
I
my
laughed.
online classes.
We chatted for
borrowed
another
paperbacks,
hour,
a
moving
few
from
old journals
fertility
that
treatments
survived
to
the
Chloe's
chaos.
work, my job,
Nora helped
and
me hang
eventually
string lights
to the
across
lake
the
house
ceiling
that had
beams.
inadvertently brought us
When we
into
plugged
each
them in
other's
for the first
lives.
time,
I finally
the soft
closed
glow
on my
made
own
the
place,
concrete walls
she
look
mentioned.
almost cozy.
Not on the lake, but
It's
a small
like a
cabin
fairy
in the
cave,
mountains.
she said,
Somewhere I can go to
grinning.
clear my head
A
when the city
dragon
gets
hoard for your
overwhelming.
freedom.
That
Some
sounds
nights,
perfect.
I'd sit down there with a
As we
blanket
prepared
around
to
my
leave,
shoulders,
Chloe
Duchess at my
handed me a
feet,
small
studying case law,
gift
or
bag.
scribbling plans in a
I
battered
got you
notebook.
something. A thank you
My
for being
dreams
there
weren't
when you
huge
had
yet.
absolutely
No
no
skyscrapers or
obligation to
mansions,
be.
but they were mine.
Inside
Finish
was a
my
delicate
degree,
silver
get a better
bracelet
job
with a
than
small
pouring
charm in the
overpriced
shape of a
coffee for
lotus
lawyers who
flower.
didn't tip.
It's
Maybe
beautiful,
rent out the spare
I
room.
said, genuinely
Maybe never
touched.
let anyone
But
that
you
close
didn't need
again.
to.
It
I
depended
wanted
on
to,
the day.
she
But
interrupted.
freedom has a
The
funny
lotus
way of
grows in
feeling
mud,
fragile.
yet emerges
One
clean
morning,
and beautiful.
an envelope showed up,
It
wedged
reminded
under
me
my
of how
front
something
door.
good can come from
No
difficult
return address,
circumstances.
just my name scrawled
She
in blocky letters.
smiled ruefully.
I knew that handwriting.
Like a friendship
I'd
formed
seen it on
because
old
I was
birthday
mistaken
cards
for
Dad
your
used to
husband's
sign when Mom
mistress.
couldn't be bothered.
I laughed at
I
her
sat on the
directness.
porch steps.
When you put
Duchess
it that
pressed
way,
against my side like a warm shield.
we parted
and
with a
ripped it
hug that
open.
felt natural
It
despite
wasn't a
our
threat this
unusual
time.
connection,
Not exactly.
promising to stay
It
in
was a
touch
letter,
regardless
2
of where
pages
life
of
took us
blame and
next.
excuses,
That
twisted
evening,
together
I
so
showed
tight
Daniel
it
the
read like a
bracelet,
prayer.
explaining
Dad's
its
words
significance.
jumped off the paper.
The
Your
lotus
mother's
metaphor
sick.
is apt,
Marina's
he
gone.
observed,
The
examining
house
the charm.
isn't a home without
Though
you.
I'm still a bit
We were
amazed
wrong.
that you and
I
Chloe
was
have
wrong.
become friends
Come
after how
back.
you first met.
Let's fix this. Bah,
Life
too.
is strange that way.
I laughed out
mused.
loud.
My birthday
Duchess thumped
crisis
her
led to
tail,
Olivia
as if
deciding to
agreeing it was the
pursue
worst joke she'd
motherhood,
ever heard.
to us finding
I
out
didn't
about
show
the
Nora the
possibility
letter
of
right
twins,
away.
to a
tucked it
friendship
into
with
my
someone
journal
I initially
instead,
thought was
where the
having an
sharp
affair with my
edges couldn't
husband.
cut me again.
Daniel pulled me
But
close.
the words stuck to my ribs
Just 3
like
more
old
days until
gum.
we know for sure about the
Sour,
pregnancy.
impossible to scrape
3
off.
more days,
The
I
part that
echoed,
rattled me most
trying to keep
wasn't
my
the
expectations
apology.
measured.
It was the invitation.
But that night, as I lay in
The
bed,
idea that after
hand
all this,
resting
he thought
gently
I'd
on my
crawl back,
abdomen, I
that
allowed
they'd get the
myself to
power
feel a
again.
flicker of genuine hope.
Nora saw it on my face the
Not
next
just for a
evening.
positive pregnancy test,
We were lying on
but
the
for
living
all the
room
new
rug,
beginnings
playing
taking
cards
shape
and
around
eating
me.
leftover takeout.
Olivia's journey,
You got that look
Chloe's
again,
fresh
she
start,
said, tossing
and my
down a
own
queen of
evolving
spades.
story with Daniel.
Like you're about to burn something down.
Whatever the test revealed,
I pulled the
I
letter
knew
out
that my
and slid it
35th
across the
birthday
rug.
had
She read it
marked a
once,
turning
then
point.
again, her jaw tightening with every
What had
line.
begun in fear and
You want me to send him
misunderstanding
a
had
flaming
somehow
bag of dog
blossomed
poop?
into
I'll
deeper
do it.
connections
I'll do
and
it
new
right now.
possibilities.
I laughed,
lotus emerging
startled
from
by
the mud,
sound.
reaching toward the
No,
light.
I just needed to
The
see it in
light.
someone else's hands.
The day of the
So it's
embryo
not just in
transfer
my head.
arrived with a mix of sunshine and
Nora
scattered
looked up at
clouds,
me, her eyes
weather that
soft
matched
but
my
steady.
emotional state perfectly.
Culla, you don't owe
Hope
him anything.
bright as the sunlight,
Not your forgiveness.
caution hovering
not
like
your
the
presence.
clouds.
Not a single
Daniel
damn
and I
word.
arrived at the fertility clinic
I
an hour
know,
early,
and I did.
too anxious to sit at home
but
waiting.
knowing didn't make the ache
3
disappear.
times is the charm,
A week
Daniel
passed
said,
before I heard from
squeezing
Marina
my
again.
hand as we checked in
This
at the
time,
reception desk.
It was a voicemail.
This was
Her
our
voice
3rd
thin,
attempt at implantation
scratchy,
after
like
2
she'd been
previous
crying
failures.
For hours. Hey,
Let's hope so,
I know you
I
probably
replied,
hate me.
trying to keep my voice
That's
steady
fair.
despite the butterflies.
I'm sorry
in my stomach.
for all of it.
The waiting
Mom's
room was
not well.
softly lit with comfortable
Dad's
chairs
worse.
and soothing
I'm staying
artwork
with a friend.
designed to calm
It's not
anxious
forever.
patients like us.
But Duchess, okay?
As we settled
Is she
in,
happy?
I noticed a familiar figure
tiny,
seated
wet
across the
laugh.
room, head bent
She
over a
probably
magazine.
likes you more than me.
Olivia?
Anyway,
I called softly. She looked up,
I hope you're
surprise
okay.
and then embarrassment
I
crossing
didn't
her
call
features.
Her back.
Megan,
I didn't know what to
Daniel,
say that wouldn't open a door.
I didn't expect
I'd
to see you
spent
here
so long
today.
nailing
We
shut.
moved
But
to sit
I did
beside
look
her.
At Duchess.
My
Sprawled
transfer is
across my
scheduled for
bed
10,
like she owned it,
I explained.
and whispered,
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Olivia
She's okay.
hesitated,
Autumn came
glancing
early that
between
year.
us.
I found myself at the window more often.
I decided to
watching
go
the
through
leaves
with it.
turn, the street
My
empty
initial
except for the
consultation is this
mailman
morning.
And the neighborhood kids riding bikes
Joy
up
burst
and down the
through
cracked
me.
sidewalk.
That's
I'd stand
wonderful.
there,
I didn't
coffee
know
cup
you'd made up
warming
your
my
mind.
palms, thinking
It
about
wasn't
all the
easy,
ways this house
she
had tried
admitted.
to swallow me whole.
After our
and how I'd
conversation at your
carved out my own
birthday,
space
I did a
inside it
lot of
anyway.
thinking.
One night,
Talked to some
I
single
dreamed of the
mothers by
basement.
choice, did
But
research.
it wasn't cold this time.
She
It was
smiled,
full of light.
slightly.
The shelves were overflowing
Then I
with
realized
books,
I was doing
my
all the
journals
things
stacked
someone
like
does when
trophies.
they've already
I
made
heard
their
laughter,
decision, but need
Nora's,
to feel
maybe,
justified.
and Duchess barking.
Daniel gave
chasing
her an
shadows
encouraging
that didn't scare
nod.
me anymore.
That's how
I
we
woke up
felt when we
smiling
first
for the
started
first
this
time in
journey.
months. But peace
Researching
is never just
obsessively,
peace.
even though we'd
A
already
week before
decided,
Halloween,
a nurse appeared in the
certified
doorway.
letter arrived.
Megan Warren,
Dad's last
we're
shot.
ready for you.
He'd filed for
My
bankruptcy.
heart leapt into
and
my
he'd listed
throat.
me as a dependent.
This was
A
it.
dependent. The
Good
word
luck.
made my skin skin
Olivia
crawl.
said, hugging me
Like
tightly.
he thought he could still tether
I'll
me
be
to
sending
him,
all the
drain
positive
what I'd
thoughts I
built,
can muster.
keep me in his orbit just
The
a little
procedure
longer.
itself was
Nora
quick
was in
and
the
relatively
kitchen when I read
painless,
it. Nope, she
anticlimactic
said,
given the
before I
years
could
of
even
treatments,
speak. You are
tests,
not his
and
dependent.
disappointments that
You are
had
not
led to
his
this
anything.
moment.
I know.
Dr.
But
Chen
the court
worked
will
with
see the
focused
paperwork.
efficiency,
My name,
explaining
the
each
connection.
step as the
I
carefully
ran a hand through my
selected
hair.
Embryos
like
were
he's pulling
transferred.
strings I thought I'd
As we
cut.
discussed,
Then cut
she
them
said as
again.
she finished,
She grabbed her
we've
phone.
transferred two
We'll get Cruz on
high-quality
it.
embryos.
We'll bury him in
Based on your
counterclaims.
hormone
We'll
levels
make him
and the
wish he'd
embryo
never learned
quality,
how to sign
there's
his
approximately
damn
a
name.
60%
I watched her
chance of
dial.
at least
Her
one
voice sharp and
implanting
bright as she
successfully,
explained
and about a
everything to Miss
30%
Cruz.
chance that both will.
Duchess nudged
And
my
if
knee
both
with her
implant?
nose.
Daniel
I scratched
asked,
behind
holding
her
my hand
ears and thought
tightly.
about how love
Then
shows
you'll be
up in
having
the weirdest
twins,
ways.
she replied
How
with a smile.
sometimes you don't get
We'll
to
know
choose
more
who
in
you
about
love,
2 weeks when we
but you
can
can
perform the
choose what
first
you
blood
protect.
test for pregnancy
By
hormones.
Thanksgiving, the
2
court
weeks.
sided with me.
The infamous
Dad's claim was thrown
2-week
out.
wait
Ms.
that every
Cruz
woman
called me
in
with the
fertility
news.
treatment dreaded.
He's done,
That
Kala.
limbo
I don't
between
think he'll come at
potential
you
and
again.
certainty,
You'd be
hope,
surprised,
and knowledge.
I said.
For
My
now,
voice lighter than
Dr.
I
Chen
felt.
continued,
He always finds
regular
a way.
activity is fine,
And you'll keep
but
finding
avoid
ways to shut
strenuous
him down.
exercise, hot
That's what makes
baths,
you dangerous.
and try to minimize
After
stress.
we hung up, I sat on
She
my
gave
porch
me a
steps
knowing
with
look.
Duchess pressed to my side.
I know that last
watching
part
the
is
neighborhood
easier said
kids
than
kick up
done.
dead leaves like confetti.
As we left the clinic,
the air smelled like
we
wood
passed
smoke
Olivia
and
still
freedom.
waiting for her
Nora
appointment.
pulled up with 2 grocery bags.
She gave us a
I
thumbs
know
up,
we said we'd
mouthing,
skip
"Call me
Thanksgiving
later,"
this year,
as we
she
headed for
said,
the
dropping
elevator.
the bags on my porch.
In the car,
But screw that.
Daniel turned to
I got
me
us
before
frozen
starting the
pie
engine.
and microwave mashed potatoes.
How do you feel?
Duchess can have the
Physically?
turkey scraps.
Fine.
We ate on the floor
Emotionally?
again.
Like
Legs
I'm
crossed,
balancing on a
plates
tightrope.
balanced on our knees.
I placed my hand
Duchess
gently
drooled
on my
shamelessly
abdomen,
until I gave
trying
her a
to
bite of
connect with the
turkey.
microscopic
Nora
embryos
raised
now
her
hopefully
plastic cup
finding
of
their
boxed
way to
wine.
implant.
To Kala.
I want to be
To the
optimistic,
girl who gave
but
her
I'm
family
scared.
30 days and gave
Scared.
herself the rest
They
of
said
her
late
life.
afternoon, I
I
reminded
clinked my
Daniel
cup
for
against
perhaps the
hers.
10th time.
To the girl
That
who'll
could
never
mean any
sleep
time
in a
between now
basement
and
again.
6.
Duchess barked
Why don't
like
we
she
sit on the
understood.
dock? He
Maybe
suggested.
she did. That
It's your
night,
favorite
when Nora
spot.
was asleep on the couch,
The
I
wooden
lay in
dock
my bed
extended
staring
30
at the
feet into the
ceiling.
lake,
The same ceiling
ending
I'd
with a small
memorized as a
seating
kid.
area where
The
we'd
one I'd
spent
wanted to
countless
escape so
hours watching
badly.
sunsets,
Now it felt
discussing
different,
our dreams,
like a roof I'd built
processing
myself.
disappointments.
I reached for
Today,
my
it
phone.
felt like the
I almost
perfect place
scrolled
to
through old
receive
photos.
news that would shape our
Marina
future.
in her cheer uniform.
We sat side by
Mom's
side,
forced
feet
smiles.
dangling above the
Dad's
water,
gruff arm around my
hands
shoulders.
intertwined between
But
us.
I didn't.
My
I
phone
deleted them
rested
all,
on my lap,
one by one.
screen up,
No more
volume
ghosts.
at maximum,
The
so we
house
wouldn't
creaked,
miss the
But it didn't
call.
scare me. I drifted
Whatever
off
happens,
with Duchess snoring
Daniel
at my
said
feet.
quietly.
The hum of Nora's
We'll face
soft
it
breathing
together.
down the hall.
I squeezed his
For the
hand
first
in
time
acknowledgement,
forever,
too
the darkness
emotional
felt
to speak.
like rest, not a threat.
At 4:43 p.m.,
Sometimes,
my
the
phone
worst
rang.
endings leave room
Dr.
for the
Chen's
best
name lighting
beginnings.
up the screen.
I didn't know what my
My
beginning
heart
looked
lurched
like
as I
yet,
answered,
but I knew
putting
this.
it on
It
speaker so
wouldn't
Daniel
include
could
locked
hear.
basement doors or
Hello?
barking above my head.
Megan,
It wouldn't
it's
include
Dr.
Dad's
Chen.
fists on the table
I
or Mom's
have
crocodile tears.
your
It
test
wouldn't
results.
include Marina's
I
puppy
tightened
dog
my
eyes
grip on
begging for my
Daniel's hand.
scraps. It would
We're
include
both here
Duchess
listening.
and Nora.
There was a brief
And the
pause,
quiet warmth
surely
of a
no more
house
than a
that was
second,
really,
but it
truly
felt like an
mine.
eternity.
That was enough.
Congratulations,
December hit the town like a
Dr.
cold
Chen
slap.
said warmly.
Frost on the windows
You're
every morning,
pregnant.
breath like smoke.
The
when
words
Duchess
hung
and
in
I
the
went
air
for our
between
early
us,
walks.
almost
She'd
too
trot through the
enormous to
crunchy grass,
comprehend.
sniffing old fence posts.
Daniel's hand
her
trembled
tail
in
wagging
mine,
like she'd never
or perhaps
been sick a day
mine
in
and
her
his.
life. I
Really?
liked those walks.
I finally managed,
They made me feel
my
awake
voice
in a way
barely a
coffee
whisper.
never did. Inside,
Really?
the house hummed
She
with a warmth
confirmed.
that was all mine.
Your
No
HCG
barking
levels
above my
are
head.
quite high, which
No
is very
basement door
promising.
slammed shut
Based
behind
on the
me.
numbers,
Just the
there's a
steady,
strong
quiet
possibility
beat
that
of my
both
own
embryos
heartbeat.
have implanted
And Duchess's
successfully.
soft paws patting
Twins?
behind me from room to room.
Daniel's voice
Nora
cracked on the
called it
word.
my peace season.
It's too early to
You've earned
confirm
it,
through
she'd say
ultrasound,
every time
but the
she caught
hormone
me
levels
staring out
certainly
the window,
suggest that
lost in
possibility.
my own head.
We'll know more in
But
a few
don't you
weeks.
dare get boring
The conversation
on me.
continued.
One night, right
Instructions for
before Christmas, we dragged
medications,
out the old fig
scheduling
tree
the first
from the attic.
ultrasound,
The box was
cautionary
covered in duct
advice
tape.
about the fragility of
plastic
early
needles bent
pregnancy.
and crushed.
But
Nora
I was
looked
only
at it
half
like it was a
listening,
stray dog we'd
stunned by the
rescued.
reality that after
Perfect,
years of
she
trying,
said,
of
just like us.
disappointment,
We
of
spent
procedures
hours
and
untangling the
injections and
lights,
tears,
cursing every
we were
burned-out
finally
bulb,
pregnant.
blasting the cheesiest holiday
When the call
playlist we
ended,
could find.
Daniel and I
Duchess
sat in
watched us
silence
from
for
her new
several
dog bed.
moments,
The fancy
letting the news
orthopedic
settle
one
around
I'd
us
bought her
like
as
the
an
golden
early present.
afternoon light on the
She
lake.
wagged her tail every time
We did
dropped
it,
an ornament.
he said
which was
finally,
often,
his voice
when
thick
the
with
tree
emotion.
was done,
We
leaning
did
a
it,
little to the left.
I repeated,
The star
tears
crooked.
spilling freely
We sat on
now.
the floor.
We're
backs
having a
against
baby.
The couch,
Maybe
eating
two.
cookies straight from the plastic
Daniel
tub.
pulled me into
Nora nudged
his
my
arms,
shoulder.
and we
You
clung to
know,
each other on
she
the dock,
said,
laughing
this is what
and
they mean
crying
by home,
simultaneously,
not the walls,
overwhelmed by
not the
joy and
mortgage.
fear and
This,
relief,
I
and a
believed
thousand
her.
other
I
emotions
did.
impossible to
But some
name.
nights,
I
the
can't
old
believe
fear
it,
still crept
I kept
in like
saying.
a draft.
After
I'd stand
everything,
at the kitchen
after all this
window,
time,
phone in my hand,
after
half
your birthday
expecting to see
disaster,
Dad's truck
Daniel
idling at the
added with a
curb,
small laugh.
or Mom's name lighting
That
up my
wasn't a
screen,
disaster, I
or
corrected him,
Marina,
wiping tears from
eyes
my
red,
cheeks.
asking for
It
just
was a
one more thing.
revelation.
They
If
didn't
I
come.
hadn't
Not
found your
that week.
ring, Read that
Not for
email.
Christmas.
Come up here
The
looking for
silence
you.
was louder than any
You might never
fight.
have found the birthday
On
gift or my
Christmas
notes
morning,
about the
I
fertility
woke
treatment.
up to find
He
Duchess
finished.
sitting at the edge
We
of
might
my
have
bed,
missed that
tail
perfect moment
thumping.
of alignment
Her
where
eyes
everything
were so
came
bright,
together.
It made my chest
I
ache.
nodded, resting
All
my
right,
head on his shoulder
I
as we
muttered,
looked
dragging myself
out
up.
over the
You
tranquil
win.
lake.
Nora had stayed over the night
It's strange
before,
to think that one of the
crashed on my
worst days of
couch
my
with a
life
string
turned
of
into one of
battery
the
fairy
best.
lights draped over her like a blanket.
Life's funny that way,
She woke up
Daniel
to Duchess
mused.
licking her face,
The
barking
things
for
we fear
breakfast.
most
Your
sometimes
dog's
lead
an
us
alarm
exactly
clock,
where we
Nora
need to
grumbled,
go.
swatting Duchess's
As the
tail
sun
away.
began its descent
A furry,
toward the
drooly alarm
horizon,
clock.
casting
We made
long golden
pancakes,
reflections
burnt half
across
of
the
them,
water,
ate the other
we
half
sat
standing
wrapped
in the
in each
kitchen.
other's arms,
Nora gave
contemplating
me a
the
tiny
journey
plant,
that had brought us
a
to
little
this
rosemary
moment,
bush,
and the one
because
still
you keep forgetting to
unfolding
buy
before
herbs,
us.
and it'll make this place smell
Impulsively,
less like paint and
I pulled out
coffee.
my phone
I
again.
gave her a necklace.
Who are you
A
calling?
silver disc
Daniel
stamped
asked.
with "Family
Not
by
calling.
Choice."
Texting.
She cried, punched my
I showed him the
shoulder,
screen
and
where I'd
cried
opened a group
again.
message to Olivia
Duchess
and
got a new
Chloe.
squeaky toy
Positive
shaped like
test.
a turkey.
Possibly
She shredded
twins.
it by lunch.
More
The day
details
passed
soon,
in a
but wanted to
warm
share the
blur.
news with the two
For the
people
first
whose
time
lives
since I
got
was a
tangled up
kid,
in our story
Christmas
in the
didn't feel
strangest
like
ways.
a test I had to pass.
Thank you
It
both
was
for being
just
part of this journey.
soft,
Responses
ordinary,
came almost immediately.
perfect. But
Olivia,
the shadows always found a way back.
screaming.
A week later, right
I
before New
knew.
Year's, I got a text
It?
from a number I
Calling
didn't
you in 5
recognize.
minutes when I stop
No
crying
name,
happy tears.
Just, I'm outside. Can we talk? I peeked
Chloe.
through the blinds.
Congratulations. The
Mom,
universe works in mysterious
Standing at the end of the
ways.
walkway,
So
wrapped
happy
in her
for you
old winter
both.
coat, hat
They were
pulled
both
down
there
low.
at crucial
She looked
moments.
smaller
I
than
explained to
remembered.
Daniel.
Fragile.
Olivia when I thought
But I
I'd
knew
lost
better
you.
than to trust the
Chloe
image
when we
she
found our way
projected.
back to each other.
I cracked the door,
And
but
now
didn't
they'll be
open
part
it
of what
wide.
comes next,
Duchess
he
stood
said,
beside me,
understanding completely
her head poking out from
what
behind
comes
my
next.
leg. Hi,
The phrase
sweetheart,
seemed to expand
Mom
with possibility.
said, voice soft,
Nursery
the same
preparations,
voice she used
doctor
when she wanted
appointments,
something.
shopping for two of
Can I come
everything
in?
if the twin
Why are
possibility
you
proved
here?
true.
I asked.
There would be challenges
sugar in
ahead,
my
certainly.
No
Pregnancy
cracked
was
edges?
just the beginning of
Her
an
eyes
entirely
darted to Duchess.
new journey.
I've been
But
trying
sitting
to
there on the
reach you.
dock with Daniel,
You blocked me
watching the day
everywhere.
gradually give way to evening, I felt a
That was the
profound
point,
sense of
I said.
readiness. The path
She
that had led
flinched.
us here, winding and
please.
unexpected as it
I'm
had
not
been,
here to fight.
had somehow prepared
just-
us for whatever lay
I want
ahead.
to talk.
My phone buzzed
Then
again with a
talk,
text from
I
Olivia.
said.
Can't
Right
wait to be
here.
there for all of it.
She glanced
Auntie
at the
Liv
windows,
has a nice ring to
like
it,
she
don't?
expected Nora to
You
appear
think?
any second.
I smiled,
father?
thinking of the
He's
parallel
gone.
journeys we
He
were now
left,
embarking on.
Disappeared.
Olivia pursuing
Marina's
single
in and
motherhood
out of
by
these
choice.
people's couches.
Daniel and I finally
alone.
expecting after years of
Not
trying.
my problem,
And
I
even
said.
Chloe rebuilding
The
her
words
life
came
after
out flat.
unexpected betrayal.
Not cruel.
What are you
just
thinking about?
true.
Daniel
It
asked,
is,
noticing
she said,
my
voice
expression.
cracking.
About
You're
how
my
different
daughter.
our lives looked a month
When
ago,
it's convenient,
I replied.
I shot back.
How one day,
When you need
my
something.
birthday, changed
She
everything.
closed her eyes, breathing
Not
shallow.
everything, he
I
corrected
know
gently.
you hate me. I deserve
It changed our
But
perspective,
please,
showed
I
us
just
what
want
really
to see where you
matters.
live now.
But the love was
No,
always there.
I said.
The foundation
You don't
solid.
get that. Her
We
eyes
just needed
flicked
to remember
Duchess
that.
Again. And the dog.
As twilight settled
She's
over
better?
the lake, we finally
better,
rose from the
I
dock
said.
and walked hand in
Because I
hand
took
back
care
to the
of her.
cabin,
Not
now
you,
immersed
not
in the
Marina.
blue glow of
Me.
early evening.
Mom pressed her lips
Inside,
together, fighting
Daniel built up
tears.
the fire while I called my
Calla,
sister with the
please.
news.
It's so
Her excited
cold.
squeals so
I have
loud
nowhere
that
to go
Daniel could hear
tonight.
them from across the
I
room.
looked at her.
Later,
really looked.
curled together
The
on the
same
sofa
woman who
watching the
told me to
flames
keep
dance,
quiet when Dad
I placed a
yelled.
protective hand
Who moved
over
my things
my
to the
still flat
basement without
abdomen,
asking.
marveling at
Who
the
watched
miracle
Marina
happening beneath
lie
my
and
palm.
steal and
One
shrugged
embryo
like
or
it was
two,
normal.
it didn't matter.
I shook my head.
What mattered was
I'm
that after
sorry,
years
I
of
said,
hoping,
and I
we were
meant it.
finally on our
But
way
you're
to
not my
becoming the family we
responsibility.
dreamed of.
Not anymore.
Happy unbirthday,
She tried to reach for my
Daniel
hand.
murmured, placing his
stepped
hand over
back.
mine.
Duchess growled.
What?
Low in her chest.
Well, your actual
that was
birthday
enough.
was kind of a
Mom dropped
disaster
her
until
arm.
the end.
If you
He
shut
explained
this
with a
door,
smile.
you'll regret it.
So consider this
No,
your
I
unbirthday
said, pushing
celebration,
the door until
the day
only
we
my
found
face
out we're
was
going to be
visible.
parents.
What I'd regret
I like
is letting
that,
you back in.
I decided, nestling
Then
closer
I
to
closed
him.
it,
A
locked
new
it,
tradition to mark
sat
a
down
new
on the floor
beginning.
with my back against the
Outside,
wood, heart
night had
pounding
fully
like I'd
claimed
just
the
run a
lake,
mile.
stars reflecting
Duchess pressed her warm
in its
weight
dark
into my
surface
side.
like scattered diamonds.
She didn't bark. She didn't move.
Inside, wrapped
She
in
just
Daniel's
stayed.
arms leaves with the fire warming our
Nora
faces,
came by that night carrying
I felt a
grocery
profound
bag
sense of
instant noodles
homecoming.
and cheap wine.
not just to this place we
I saw her,
loved,
she said
but to
before
the
I even
future
asked.
we'd been working toward
She
all
left.
along.
You did
the
the
journey
right thing.
Had been
I
nothing
didn't
like I'd
answer
expected.
right away.
There had been
I was staring at
detours
the
and
door,
misunderstandings,
half expecting a
moments
knock
of
that never
despair and
came.
unexpected
It
allies.
doesn't feel good.
But sitting here
No,
now,
Nora
I
said,
wouldn't have
cracking open
changed
the
a
wine.
single step of
It's
the
not
path that had
supposed
led
to.
us here.
It just
Not
feels
even
done.
the moment on my 35th
We ate
birthday
noodles
when
in
I'd found
silence.
Daniel's
Duchess
wedding
curled up
ring on the
between us like
bathroom
a living
sink and
pillow.
feared the worst.
Outside, fireworks
Because
cracked
sometimes
early in the
I
night
now
sky.
understood.
A new year
What seems
coming,
like an
whether I
ending
was
is
ready or not.
actually just the beginning
When
of a
Nora
different,
left, I
better
stood on the
story than the
porch,
one you
cold
thought
air
you were
biting my
living.
cheeks.
And
No
our new
cars.
story
No
was just beginning
footsteps.
to unfold.
No
Was just
shadows
beginning
under
to
the street
unfold.
lamps.
The morning of
Just
my
me
pregnancy test
and
dawned
Duchess.
crisp and clear.
And the faint warmth
I
of a
woke
house
before
that
the
didn't
alarm,
belong to anyone
my
but
body
me.
humming with nervous energy
went
despite
inside.
having barely slept.
Closed the door.
Beside me,
Locked it
Daniel
again.
stirred,
Sat with my
immediately
back to
alert
it,
as if he'd
breathing
been hovering
slow.
just below consciousness.
Done.
All
It was
night.
done.
Today's the day,
But deep
he
down,
murmured,
I knew
reaching
there'd
for my
always
hand.
be ghosts.
Today's the day,
The difference
I
now?
echoed,
I
trying to
wasn't
keep my
afraid of
voice
them
steady.
anymore.
We had an
January
8
arrived
a.m.
like an
appointment at the
exhale.
fertility clinic for the
Cold,
blood
but
test that would
quiet.
determine whether
No
the embryo
letters,
transfer
no
had been
knocks,
successful.
No trucks
Dr.
idling on the
Chen
street
had
with
promised
headlights
results
off.
by late afternoon,
It was almost
which
eerie, the
meant
way the
hours of
chaos
waiting,
just
wondering,
stopped.
and trying not to
I
obsess
didn't
over
trust
every
it.
potential
Not
symptom.
at first. I'd wake up some nights,
The drive to the
heart
clinic
hammering in my
passed in
chest,
comfortable silence,
waiting for the other shoe to
both
drop.
of us lost
But
in
then
our
I'd
own
feel
thoughts and
Duchess's weight
fears.
at my feet. Hear
Over the
soft
past
hum
2
of
years of
Nora
treatments,
snoring in the
we'd
next
been
room when
through
she stayed over.
this
and the
exact
house would
scenario
settle
twice
around me like a
before.
blanket.
Both times had ended
Safe,
in disappointment.
solid. I spent the
Both
days
times
working
we'd
double shifts
regrouped,
at the cafe,
adjusted the
pouring
approach,
espresso
and tried
for
again.
lawyers who still didn't tip enough.
But this time felt
saving
different.
every penny, like the world
Maybe
might
it was the
collapse
increased
tomorrow.
hormone levels
But when I
Dr.
came
Chen had been
home,
so
I didn't
encouraged
dread
by.
the turn of the key.
Maybe
I
it was
didn't
the higher
flinch at
quality of the
shadows.
embryos.
I was alone.
Or
in the
maybe it
best
was
way.
simply
One Sunday,
that the journey
Nora
to this
dragged me out
moment
to
had
the
been
local
so
thrift market.
unexpected,
You
from
need
birthday
furniture that isn't
crisis to
falling
renewed
apart, she
commitment to
declared,
potential
arms
twins,
crossed, face
that it seemed
serious like a
fated to
drill
succeed.
sergeant. And I needed
The blood draw
distraction from my
itself took
garbage
less than a
job.
minute.
So we spent
As the
hours
nurse labeled
picking
my
through
sample,
battered tables,
she smiled
mismatched
encouragingly.
chairs, lamps with
Try to
crooked
keep busy
shades.
today.
I bought a
Staring
battered
at your
writing
phone
desk
waiting for
$20
results won't make them
solid
come any
oak under the
faster.
scratches. I
Easier
ran
said
my
than
fingers
done.
along the gouges and thought,
Breakfast?
this
Daniel
is mine
suggested
now.
as we left the
Every
clinic.
scar included.
That
Back
diner
home, we carried
you
it down to
like
the
is just
basement.
around the corner.
My basement.
Normally,
My
the thought of
studio.
their blueberry
We
pancakes would have
rearranged my
been
books
tempting,
and class notes,
but my
made
stomach
space for
was
my
in
laptop,
knots.
and a chipped mug
Actually,
that said,
I think I
"Boss
want to go to the
lady."
lake house.
I sat there that
Daniel
night,
raised an
Duchess
eyebrow.
snoring under the desk,
Really?
and realized
That's
how
a
good it
2-hour
felt to have a place
drive.
to dream.
I know, but
not just
it feels
survive.
right. That's where
Dream.
everything changed on my
Classes picked
birthday,
up.
where we found
I'd
out
come
about the
home
fertility
exhausted,
treatment working.
Plop my bag on the kitchen
It seems
floor,
fitting to be there
and
when we
sit
get the
cross-legged
results.
with Duchess
He
pressed
smiled,
against my knees
understanding
while I read
without
through
needing
assignments.
further
Nora
explanation.
would call every other night.
The lake house it
Are you
is.
still alive? Eating
We
real
stopped
food?
at home to pack overnight
Not
bags,
letting your mom crawl
both of
through
us
the
moving
vents?
with purpose,
I'd
grateful
laugh,
for
promise
something
her I was
concrete to
fine.
do.
And mostly,
As Daniel
I
loaded the
was,
car, my phone rang.
until the letter
Olivia.
arrived.
How are you holding up?
It came in early
She asked
February.
without preamble.
A plain white
Nervous,
envelope
hopeful,
slipped through the mail
terrified,
slot.
I admitted.
No stamp.
We just did the
no
blood
postmark.
test. And now,
Just
the
Culla,
longest wait of your
written in
life
that
begins.
Same shaky hand I'd learned to
She
read
knew the
before I could
process
write my own
well
name.
after supporting me through previous
Inside.
attempts.
Please.
Actually,
I'm
we're heading to
sick.
the lake house to wait
Just
for the
talk to
results.
me. No signature.
It seemed
but I knew
symbolic
it was Mom.
somehow.
I
That's
held the letter
perfect,
for a long time.
Olivia agreed.
Duchess
Full
sat
circle
beside
moment.
me, nose
She
pressed into
paused.
my hip.
Want
her breath warm
company?
through my sweatshirt.
I could drive
I
up
thought about
later,
the night she'd
be there
shown
when
up
you
at my
get the
door in
call.
the cold.
I
The way
considered
she'd
her
tried to slip
offer,
her foot back
touched
into
by
my
her
life,
willingness
like it
to
was
drop
owed to her.
everything to support us.
I thought about the years
Thanks,
of hushed apologies.
but I think
the,
Daniel and I
"I'm
need
sorry,"
this time together.
That only came when she
Whatever
needed
the
something.
results, we should
I folded
process
the letter and fed
them
it to
privately
the flame
first.
In the kitchen sink.
I understand
Watched
completely.
The words curl
but
and
I'm just a
blacken
phone
until
call
there was
away if you
nothing
need
left
me.
to read.
I know. And
Nora
Liv,
came over that night with
thank you
Thai
for
takeout
everything.
and a stack
Not just
of battered
today,
magazines.
but throughout this
She
whole
didn't
journey.
ask what the letter said.
That's what best friends
she
are
didn't
for,
need to.
she said
we
simply.
sprawled on the living room floor.
As we drove north toward the
Duchess
lake,
wedged between
I
us
felt
like a
my
furry
anxiety
peace treaty,
gradually
and talked about
easing.
everything except the ghosts
There
still
was something
knocking at my
almost
door.
meditative
Spring
about watching the
tiptoed in.
cityscape
The
give of way to
faded from the
suburbs,
windows.
and then to
The air lost
countryside,
its edge.
as if
I
we were
found myself
physically
leaving the
distancing
porch light
ourselves
off
from the stress
sometimes.
of waiting.
A small rebellion against
What
the
are you
fear
thinking
that had
about?
owned me for so
Daniel
long.
asked,
I
glancing
started
over at
leaving my
me.
phone on Do Not Disturb
How much
after
has
10.
changed since we were
No
last
more
here?
nights waiting for
It's only
texts
been a
that
few
never brought
weeks, but it
peace.
feels like longer.
I slept better.
He
I dreamed
nodded.
softer. In March,
Your birthday
I
seems
planted
like a
flowers along
lifetime
the fence
ago.
line. Hardy little
A lifetime
things that
ago,
Nora
I thought,
swore could survive my
You were
terrible
leaving
luck
me,
with
I
plants.
mused. Now we
Duchess
might be
dug
having
half of them up the
twins.
first week.
Let's not
Dirt
get ahead of
smudged on her
ourselves,
nose like a
he
guilty
cautioned
toddler.
gently. though I
didn't
could hear
mind.
the
It
undercurrent of
felt like proof
excitement
the
in his
house was
voice.
alive, not just
We
surviving on
arrived at the
borrowed
lake
time.
house shortly after
One
noon.
afternoon, while I was
Unlike my
hauling mulch
previous
bags from my
frantic visit
trunk,
on my
a
birthday,
neighbor I
this
barely
time I
knew
noticed
stopped
the
me at the curb.
subtle signs of
Mrs.
early
Kellerman,
autumn.
old as the
Gold-tinged
street
leaves
itself,
on the maple
her voice
trees,
like gravel
the
dipped in
slightly cooler
honey.
breeze off the
I just
water,
wanted to say,
monarch butterflies
she
pausing
rasped,
on their
leaning
migration
on her
south.
cane. I've been
Inside,
watching you,
the cabin
Kala.
welcomed
You've
us
done
with familiar
good.
comfort.
That family of
Daniel
yours.
built a small
You
fire
didn't
while I
let 'em
prepared
break you.
lunch, both of
I
us
stared
finding
at her,
solace in routine
words caught in
tasks.
my throat.
We ate on the deck,
Thank you,
watching the
I
lake
managed.
sparkle in the
It
afternoon
sounded
sun,
small, but it felt
deliberately
huge.
avoiding conversation about what
She
the
patted
test
my
results
arm,
might reveal.
her hand dry and light
Remember
as
when we
moth
bought this
wings.
place?
Don't
Daniel
let 'em
asked,
come crawling
gazing out
back.
over the water.
Some people drown you
3
when
years
they're
ago this
sinking.
month, I nodded.
I carried her words
Everyone
with
thought
me
we
like
were
a charm.
crazy spending
Some
that
nights
much
when
on
the
a
fear
second
clawed at my
property.
ribs, I'd whisper
Best
them
decision
to
we
myself.
ever made. We spent
Don't
the
let 'em come
afternoon
crawling back.
walking the lakeshore,
Duchess turned
skipping
7 that
stones
April.
across the calm water,
The vet said
and
she'd need more
steadfastly
meds
not
soon.
checking our
More
phones every
checkups.
5 minutes.
It wasn't cheap,
By 4
but I
o'clock,
didn't
however,
care.
the pretense of
She'd
distraction
become
had
the
grown
quiet
thin.
heartbeat of the
Distraction had grown
house.
thin.
The soft reminder that I could care for something and have it love me back without taking everything. Nora threw her a birthday party. Cheap, squeaky toys, leftover cupcakes, us sitting on the porch with paper hats that kept blowing away in the wind. To Duchess, Nora toasted, raising her plastic cup, the queen of second chances. I looked at Duchess, tongue lolling, eyes bright, and thought, she's not the only one. By May, the house felt lighter than ever. I caught myself humming while folding laundry, leaving the windows open all day, dreaming about what else I could do. Maybe finish the spare room, rent it out to a student like me. Maybe take a real vacation, just me and Nora, a cabin somewhere far from anyone who ever knew my name. But even as the light poured in, I knew some shadows don't die, they just wait. And one night they knocked again. It was late, past midnight. I'd been up finishing an essay, Duchess at my feet, the house humming with the soft buzz of spring insects. A soft, hesitant knock at the door. 3 slow taps. I froze. Duchess lifted her head, ears perked, a low growl rumbling in her throat. I stood, heart pounding, every old fear waking up all at once. I didn't look through the peephole. I knew who it was, or at least, who it had to be. I opened the door a crack, the chains still on. There she was, Marina. Her hair matted, her hoodie too thin for the night air, eyes red and hollow. "Kala," she whispered, "I don't have anywhere to go." I didn't speak. Duchess pressed against my leg, her growl low but steady. Marina wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Please, just for tonight." "I won't stay. It's so cold." I looked at her. My sister. The girl who'd let them move me to the basement without a word. Who'd turned my bed into a dog palace and then abandoned the dog when it got too hard. But behind all the anger, something small flickered. Pity, maybe. Or just the old ache that never really left. "One night," I said, voice flat. "The couch. That's it." She nodded, shoulders sagging like she'd been carrying the world. I unlatched the chain. Duchess backed up, tail stiff, eyes fixed on Marina like she didn't trust her either. Marina curled up on the couch, knees tucked to her chest. "I miss this house," she whispered into the dark. "I didn't know how good we had it." "We didn't," I said. "You just didn't have to sleep in the basement." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stared at the ceiling like she was counting every crack. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in my bed, door half open, Duchess at my side. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. But morning came anyway. I made coffee. Marina sat on the couch, eyes swollen, hair tangled. She didn't look at me when I handed her the chipped mug. "Where will you go?" I asked. She shrugged. "Friend's couch. Maybe." "I don't know." I nodded. "You can't stay here." I know. Her voice was small. I wouldn't ask. She stood, hoodie hanging off her thin frame, and set the mug in the sink. You're strong, you know that? Stronger than any of us ever were. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She left without another word, the door clicking shut behind her. Duchess barked once, as if to say, "Good riddance." I scratched her ears. "Good girl," I murmured. "We're okay. We're okay." And for the first time, I really believed it. She drifted back to sleep before she could say more. Marina looked at me, eyes bloodshot. "She doesn't have long," she whispered. "Stay, please?" I stood there for a long minute. Then I shook my head. "You stay," I said. "I've done enough." I walked out of that sterile room, my heart pounding in my throat. Outside, the air tasted like cut grass and car exhaust. Normal, alive. Duchess wasn't waiting, but I pictured her on the couch at home, tail thumping, my little anchor in the real world. 2 days later, Marina texted, "She's gone." I didn't go to the funeral. Nora sat beside me on my porch that day, a soft blanket around our shoulders as the wind rustled through the new flower bed. "You did what you needed to do," she said. I nodded. I believed her. But the ache didn't disappear. Some wounds don't close, they just stop bleeding. Summer scorched the street. I started working extra hours again, saving for my last semester. My student loan forms piled up on my desk, but I didn't panic the way I used to. The basement stayed my sanctuary, the walls lined with dreams instead of dread. One night in August, I found an envelope under my front mat. No name, no address. Just my name in a shaky scrawl that made my stomach twist. Inside was a check. $50. A note. For Duchess. "I'm sorry. Marina." I laughed. A sound that felt like it belonged to someone who could breathe under the weight of it all. $50 wouldn't fix years of damage. But it was hers to give. And mine to accept or ignore. I cashed it the next morning. Bought Duchess a new bed, bought myself a new notebook, wrote future plans on the cover in blocky letters. Let the blank pages stare back at me like a promise. By September, the nights turned crisp. I'd open the windows, let the breeze chase out the stale corners of the house. Nora still dropped by most Fridays. We'd sit on the porch, legs tucked under us, Duchess snoring at our feet. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked one night, voice quiet, selling it, buying a condo downtown, starting clean. "Sometimes," I said, "but then I think about how much I fought for these walls, this squeaky porch step. That crack in the ceiling, it's mine, they can't touch it again." Nora leaned her head on my shoulder. "Then that's enough." And it was. For now. One morning, I woke up to Duchess barking at the mailman. A thick envelope slid through the slot. No handwriting this time, just a typed address. A legal seal pressed into the corner. I froze. For a heartbeat, the world spun back to that first day. The dog bed in my room, the basement walls pressing close. I tore it open. Inside. Final statement. Property clear, no contest, no claims. Officially yours. I sank onto the floor, Duchess pressing her head into my lap. I scratched behind her ears, tears hot on my cheeks. Not fear tears. Not rage. Relief. It was mine. Really, truly, no strings left for anyone to yank. I'd given them 30 days. They'd taken 30 years to bleed out. But it was done. Later, I found Nora at the cafe. "It's over," I said, breathless. "It's really over." She laughed so loud people turned to stare. "Then let's celebrate," she said. "You, me, Duchess, and the biggest ice cream sundae you've ever seen." We did. We ate until our teeth ached, Duchess licking the last drips off my fingers like she knew what it meant. Some people say family is forever. I don't think that's true. Some family you bury. Some you build. Some you grow, one safe night at a time, in a house nobody can take back. I went to bed that night in my old room. My room. No barking overhead, no locks on the basement door. Just quiet. Just mine. And in the dark, I whispered to myself, 30 days. Forever. The final days of summer faded into early autumn like an exhale I didn't know I'd been holding for years. The trees along my street blushed gold at the edges, the sun dipping sooner behind the rooftops. I woke each morning with a different kind of heaviness. Not dread, but a gentle weight that said, you made it. This is yours now. No one can lock you in a basement again. I spent my days at the cafe, saving tip after tip, building my emergency fund until it looked like a lifeboat instead of a puddle. Nora still stopped by with her wild energy and big plans. A road trip here, a second-hand bookstore tour there. Duchess got older too, slower than before, but her eyes stayed bright, her tail wagging every time I came home, like she still couldn't believe it was really me, really us. Sometimes, I'd stand in the living room, the same place I'd once found Marina draped across the couch, dog hair on my old pillow, and just listen. No footsteps overhead. No locked doors, no barking that wasn't wanted, just the hum of my own breath and Duchess's soft snores. A few neighbors got brave enough to wave again. Some didn't. Some still looked at my front door like they expected Dad to storm out yelling about ungrateful daughters. But he didn't. His shadow didn't stretch down my street anymore. His letters stopped. His truck was a ghost I no longer had to chase from my driveway. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Marina to text me from another stranger's couch, for Mom's name to show up in some forgotten insurance bill, for some lawyer to appear with a new threat tucked in a manila folder. But the days kept slipping by like pages I didn't have to rewrite. Nothing came. No footsteps, no knocks, no sudden barking. One night, Nora brought over a pizza and a half-dozen candles. "Housewarming," she said, plopping onto the couch, with Duchess pressed against her knee. 2 years too late, but better than never. We ate on the floor, our plates balanced on the battered old coffee table. Dad once threatened to chop up for firewood when he got mad. The same table that now held my textbooks, my plans for next semester, my dreams. Ours. "What's next?" Nora asked, licking pizza sauce off her thumb. "Now that you're officially the queen of your castle." I leaned back, the flicker of candlelight bouncing off the walls. "I don't know. Maybe I fix up the back fence. Plant more flowers. Finish my degree. Maybe travel, somewhere just me, maybe you." Nora raised an eyebrow. "No basement bed and breakfast?" She grinned when I snorted. "No more basements," I said. "Only windows. Only doors that lock on my terms." When she left that night, the house stayed quiet. I walked through every room, my footsteps echoing off floors that finally felt like mine. I ended up in the basement, the place they'd shoved me when they thought they could break me down to nothing, but now the pipes didn't scare me. The hum of the water heater didn't feel like a threat. The walls, painted bright white with string lights trailing overhead, felt like a promise. My promise. Duchess followed me down, her paws clicking on the stairs. She curled up on the old rug by my desk while I flipped through my battered notebook, the one labeled Future Plans, in my shaky block letters. I added a new line under the mess of half-formed dreams. Maybe write it all down someday. Because maybe it deserved that. Maybe the girl who once slept beside a leaking pipe deserved to remember that she'd clawed her way up, not for them, but for herself. One morning, a letter did come, but it was from my bank. Confirmation that the last piece of the mortgage was paid off. I read it 3 times, fingers shaking. Not because I was scared, but because freedom sometimes makes you feel light enough to float away. I told Nora that night, over grocery store cupcakes on the porch. "Debt-free," I said, holding the letter up like a trophy. She whooped so loud Duchess barked in alarm. "You did it, Wren. Nobody can ever take this from you again." Nobody could. Not Dad, with his half-baked threats. Not Mom with her tears that only fell when it was convenient. Not Marina with her crocodile apologies. They could keep their ghosts. I kept my keys. I kept my room. Fall drifted in, soft and gold. I started taking walks before sunrise, Duchess lumbering along at my side. We'd pass the old neighbors who still pretended not to see me, the kids waiting for the school bus, the empty house 2 doors down that used to throw noisy parties at midnight. It all looked different now. Smaller, quieter, kinder. One evening, I found an envelope tucked under my windshield wiper at the cafe. No return address, but I knew that handwriting like I knew my own heartbeat. I didn't open it in the parking lot. I didn't even take it home. I dropped it in the cafe trash can on my way out. Duchess needed new dog treats more than I needed. Old wounds reopened. When I got back, the porch light glowed soft. The kitchen window spilled warm light onto the walkway. I stood there a second, key poised in the lock, and thought, this is it. This is what I fought for. Inside, the house smelled like the rosemary plant Nora bought me last Christmas, and the fresh laundry I'd forgotten to fold. Duchess greeted me like she'd been waiting for me for years, not hours. Her tail thumped against the floor, the sound more comforting than any apology my parents had ever offered. I curled up on the couch with her that night, an old blanket tucked around us. I thought about all the versions of myself that had lived inside these walls. The little girl who didn't know yet that love had limits, the teenager who whispered her dreams into her pillow because nobody cared to hear them, the young woman who learned to sleep beside a dryer, humming like a lullaby for the forgotten. I thought about her, and I thanked her, because she kept the light on, even when it flickered so low I could barely see. Before I drifted off, I whispered the words I wish she'd heard sooner. We're okay, we're home, and maybe the house creaked an answer back. Tomorrow, I'd wake up early, take Duchess for her walk, pour coffee into my chipped mug that said Boss Lady, sit at my battered desk, and plan the next step, the next semester, the next dream. I didn't need everything figured out. I just needed this, the quiet proof that I was never just the room they gave away. I was the house. I was the deed. I was the lock and the key. And if anyone ever thought they could take that from me again, they'd learn exactly who they were dealing with. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.